the MLWRadio.com network.
Welcome to a new episode of the Eastern Lariat podcast, your show for news, notes, reviews, and opinions on the world of Japanese pro wrestling here on the MLW Radio Network and on cagematch.net. I'm your host, Strigga. I'm as always joined by Dylan. And Dylan, we are celebrating episode 250. And it's not just a regular episode, it's one of the crucial episodes of the year. It's the half-year awards.
Strigga, this is a big one, and for many reasons. Definitely 250 episodes. First of all, perfectly symmetrical. What a great round number to celebrate, as is tradition. And I think every wrestling company in history, if you have a big round number, that's the ones that you put that check mark next to, check the box next to these 250 episodes. Thank you to all the listeners that have continued to follow us along this wonderful journey into Japanese pro wrestling that the Eastern Lariat has been on. Never going stronger than we are now, as evidenced by the amount of votes we got for the awards. Which thank you so much to all the people out there who voted. Massive response from the fans.
Yeah,
really appreciate that. Over double of what we did last year.
It's crazy, right?
The half year of votes. I mean, you got to shout out to the people on that one. I loved it. It made it. I had to, because the Google forms, they're not always completely accurate. Maybe some people had a spelling error that changed it to a different one. I had to be meticulous and formulate all kinds of stuff to make sure that we got completely accurate votes. But I did it for the fans, because I will not allow our prestigious awards that we try to make more prestigious as time has gone along. Thank you, too, to the people who helped with the names that we've had. Things have only gotten more prestigious with the names of the awards that we had. We got a lot of new followers on Twitter, so I'm very happy with that.
Yes, absolutely. I want to go through some points, Dylan, that I have been thinking of in the last couple of days before this show that I think are important before we go into any awards. First of all, definitely this is more than any show of the year, a show of the listeners, because we got so many votes and so many different perspectives on professional wrestling. And I value that so much. I mean, when you, Dylan, do your Dramatic Dream Dragon shows, and when you get, for example, Amy on, right? Amy hasn't been watching wrestling for too long. Am I correct?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so that is a perspective that's incredibly valuable for not only for us, but more so for wrestling companies themselves, because it shows them what newer fans think is good or even great. And that can be as important and as powerful as a perspective of a wrestling fan like us that has been watching wrestling for over 20 years now. And all these perspectives coming together is just what we got here in a big melting pot of many, many votes from many, many people around the world. I mean, we got people from all around the world voting for our awards, and that's so great and so unique. I think that we got this great pool of people that just vote for our awards, and I think it's important in a lot of aspects of not only of wrestling, but you can also point to that in culture, in politics, in sports, and any kind of field that you want to throw it out. Like taking a step back from your own perspective and trying to get to the grand scheme of things is just always the way to go. You will always look on things differently. You will learn different perspectives. And that is, I think, the most crucial part of this half-year awards episode that we do each year.
Absolutely. Shout out to Amy. She was such a fun person to talk to on there, on that show, talking about Kobe World, which did just happen a week or so ago. When you look at the perspectives, that's one of the things that I think has helped myself grow as a fan in a lot of ways, looking at things through different perspectives, just in general, not even just on the award show. But I think that's a great way for everyone to grow when you see the different kinds of people and all of those perspectives, like you said, whether you're new or less new, even, the other one, like Sandre, he was in not just less than a few years ago for Dragon Gate stuff. I'm sure a lot of people actually that voted were probably I'd be surprised how many. I'm not saying there's none, and I'd shout out to you if you are one. But if you were watching Japanese wrestling before the New Japan boom, you're watching it in 2010, 11, like we were, and you go even further back than me. But if you're watching from that era, that's a totally different outlook than somebody that's came in, maybe you were a fan of. I think a lot of people came in with Okada and Tanahashi. There are probably a lot of people that voted in that era. Then there's some people that came in maybe during the last couple of few years, maybe pandemic era came in, maybe AEW started, gave you a look at somebody, something like that. We were talking even.
You can think about the guy what you want, but CM Punk brought many lapsed fans back
to AEW. His collision numbers are questionable, but they definitely did come back on his show in terms of ratings. But you get, even we were talking like Sandre and we were talking about how Cruiserweight Classic was like a big thing that. Oh yeah, that was the thing that a lot of people first saw Kota Ibushi, Zack Sabre Jr. on, and they traveled along with them to this New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then maybe you went from New Japan Pro Wrestling to another company, maybe a DDT or a Noah or Dragon Gate. Like a lot of people have so many unique journeys, and that's something I really love seeing throughout it. And obviously for us, we're longtime fans, so we all have different perspectives, and I love seeing that. That's helped me grow as a fan, I would say, overall. That's a great thing about this show. I definitely feel that's true. If you go to where we were at, in 2016 when I first came on the show to now, I definitely feel like we've both grown quite a bit as fans. Oh, yes.
Tremendous.
I don't want to just take all the credit for myself, but I think we both have, actually. The year-end awards are always the one everyone points to, but the half-year awards are vital in their own way. It's kind of like it's drawing the line in the sand pretty much. Like, this is a marker that we can go back and look at the end of the year, because that's the thing. Like, a lot of times, maybe not this specific year, considering the match of the year, how that turned out, but a lot of times, stuff that happened early on in the year, that could go by the wayside. There will be recency bias for stuff, especially by the end of the year. So now with this, after the tournaments, we have not done the G1, N1, 5-star Grand Prix, King of Gates going on right now. All of these tournaments haven't happened yet, and that's where a lot of the times where things really kick into that next gear for a lot of people. And now we've got this episode right here can be looked at throughout the rest of the year to hear what was the best of the year, not just to us, but to all the people and all of the great people that voted on this show here.
Absolutely, and I'm very interested in seeing how, for example, the Koei World cage match holds up at the end of the year when new stuff is arriving, and when the G1 is over, and when the N1 is over, and when we are moving towards Final Gate in Dragon Gate, for example. If people that are saying that this is the match of the year now are saying that in December as well. So that's going to be interesting to see. And much like you said, it's also like a stop. We stop here and we look back. It's a time for taking a breath of fresh air and just kind of digesting of what we've seen in the last 6 months. And I also want to take one point from Case Lowe from Open Voice Gate. During their last Kobe World review, he made a point that I thought of, and man, it's so true what he said. And by the way, whenever I listen to him and to Mike on Open the Voice Gate, I've been watching Dragon Gate for so long, but I always feel that I know nothing about Dragon Gate when listening to these two. So shout out to Mike and to Case. Case brought up the point that we remember things from like 2006 and 2007 more vividly than we remember stuff from 2017, for example. Mm-hmm. And he pointed that to the fact that during this day and age, new stuff comes crashing down on us every few seconds. There is new songs, there is new videos, there is a new series on Netflix or whatever. There's so much wrestling going on. You can watch wrestling 24/7 and you've basically still seen nothing. There's so much going on that during these times it's hard, really hard to find something that you'll remember in like 6 months down the line, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line. And that is why I think these shows, these awards shows, and even the half-year awards shows are so crucial, like to find something, pick something, and put it into a list to just remember that this stuff happened.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with that. I listen to that show as well. Case and Mike do an excellent job. I've had Case on this show, too, talking about the Hall of Fame at the time, too. So I've known that guy for a while. What a great source of Dragon Gate news that Open the Voice Gate is. If you're a fan of that, you got to check them out for sure. But what he said was so true, because you think about that, especially, 2009, 10, 11. That's stuff that really stuck with me because that was my formative years.
Yes.
And I think to a lot of people, like I said earlier, if they came in with Tanahashi and Okada, like a lot of that probably sticks with them. A lot of the stuff they did when they first saw it, that was still new to them. They weren't overloaded. Now, a lot of the times, if you're a fan, you get on Twitter or whatever, and you talk to all these people, and there's this community out there, and you see somebody will tell you, hey, maybe you should watch this, and then you watch that, and then you want to see other stuff. And now you've seen everything, and like he said, there's so much going on now. It's not like it was when I first started, where, you had to wait a few months to get a mega upload link. that was, and like I said, you got basically one show every few months, like to see whatever was you wanted to see. I remember waiting for Never 4 was like my golden chalice,
Okay.
I waited forever to get to Never 4 because for whatever reason, I needed to see Madoka and Taichi in the final of the. Because somebody had gotten hurt. I think it may have been Black Tiger, which was Nosawa at the time. But somebody got hurt in the Best of Super Juniors, and that match determined who would enter the tournament.
Didn't Nosawa steal a cap or something like that?
Maybe that's what it was.
Just doing Nosawa things. Yeah,
it's Nosawa, so you may totally be right on that. He was playing Black Tiger at the time, I believe. Yeah. But he was out of the tournament, so they did a tournament on Never. And, I mean, this was when Never was actually something and not just mid-card title now. They wanted to make it specifically, which they kind of basically did with Lionsgate again, which also has gone by the wayside. But it was the original shows. I waited for Never 4 so long because I wanted Madoka to get into that tournament so bad. And obviously he lost and didn't get to the tournament. But right now, if that happened, we would have saw it live, or I would have waited until it was my comfort to watch it in a few days after or whatever, and we would have already seen the whole tournament by now. But back then, there was no seeing the whole tournament. There was no way to judge something more accurately than we have this year. So there's pros and cons to it, because now that I think about it, what he said is so true, but in other ways, it's also it allows us to have better, like for something like this, I think the votes are much more knowledgeable now than they would have been 10, 12, 15 years ago. Even though we may remember the big stuff more, I think now we have a much greater scope of things, and maybe we are desensitized to it as time goes along, but I think we also have – and I mean, look at these votes here. I'm going to do some stats after we do this show and tally some numbers up just in terms of the votes, never mind what happened in Japan wrestling. But you look at these are people – that are knowledgeable about wrestling that are voting on this for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that only watch New Japan that were on this, but for the vast majority, like there's a great grasp of the Japanese wrestling scene as a whole right now when you look at these votes here. And I'm very proud of the listeners for that. I've always held our listeners' status up like the people that we talk to, and I take it to, for example, Reddit or YouTube. Since I started putting up the videos on YouTube since we went on Cage Match.
Mm-hmm.
All the comments, because you hear about people on there, and basically it's like a war zone. Like compare, a lot of people, a lot of other shows will go on there and say Reddit went insane. They said these crazy things. There's these terrible people, that say these horrible things. But if you look at us, like whenever we're brought up on there, or like when people comment on the YouTube videos, the YouTube comments is another thing. Everyone thinks it's just like a scourge upon the earth of YouTube comments. Like nothing good ever comes from there. But if you look at our comments that we've gotten, and on both of those websites, all of them are positive towards this show. Like there's never been somebody. I mean, I'm sure there's been some people that have criticized. I don't want to say
Sure.
that. But like when you look at those two formats, if you look us up on there, it's like 99% people saying, "Oh, I needed to listen to a show about Japanese wrestling. Is there a good one? Oh, Eastern Lariat gets brought up." And then on YouTube, there's been people even that I've disagreed with on the YouTube videos. Like I remember on the Stardom show, we were talking about all kinds of stuff on there. My man Connor, who listened, we had a big discussion on YouTube on one of the old videos. On the Golden Week video, somebody messaged us on YouTube and was saying how he was there at the Big Japan show, him and his partner, his romantic partner, taking her to her first Big Japan show on there, and it was a great story. I've got nothing but love for the listeners of this show. I really think we have among the best of any show, and that's kind of my piece of evidence for that. Because if you listen to other shows, they may be bigger than us, but then you'll hear them talk about that, and they just get blasted on these other formats. But that's normal. I think a vast majority of people, like I said, that's the reputation of those platforms. But with us, we've always got nothing but positive. So I want to thank you to the listeners out there who have been so smart in wrestling, and I really respect all you guys' opinions. I might not agree with all of them right now.
No, but you don't have to. That's not what we're looking for, right?
Exactly. And I think it's better. I like other perspectives, actually. I like different ideas and stuff. It would be boring if everyone voted for the same thing. Although there were a couple of awards that were kind of blowouts, but
sure.
I really respect all the people out there because I know it came from a good place. It wasn't some troll asshole type of person or whatever coming in here. I'd say every one of the votes that we got came from a good place, and we're very intelligent. So thank you to the listeners for that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And you've been doing great work here on the awards, Dylan, not only compiling all the different answers that we got here in different categories that we got, but you've also been the architect for the new names for the awards. And we've been talking about that on our last episode a bit, but for those that haven't been listening to the last one, what was your thinking behind naming the awards? For example, we got the Kenta Kobashi MVP, or the one that we are starting with in a bit, the Stan Hansen Award for the Best Foreigner.
I wanted to make the awards more prestigious, because I think in the past they've been, and I've loved doing these shows and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's more like an overall grand scheme of things. Look at the year, and obviously the listeners have been very helpful for that in the past. I wanted to make the awards a little bit prestigious, and the idea came to me because this idea came to me last year, actually, before even the year-end awards last year, because there was a controversy with the NBA. National Basketball Association. They had named their awards. They came out with this idea, and there was a big controversy on Michael Jordan, the MVP trophy. Mm-hmm. Oh, how can you name it? It should be named after LeBron, blah, 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 like whatever. But that's something you see in a lot of awards. You see that in NBA. Hockey for years, and NHL has had, like the Conn Smythe trophy and things like that, named after legendary figures. MLB, baseball, the Cy Young Award is like one of the biggest awards. So I took it from real sports. I was very inspired by that and wanted to add a little bit to our awards. We moved up with the listeners. We got a ton more votes this year. So I wanted to make them a little bit more prestigious, and I thought this was a fun way. And I think the way we did it was a great way, because it was a lot of fun seeing the people vote for things. The MVP was the one that was probably closest with between Kobashi and Misawa, and it was so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with the choices. I think me and you both made because the way we did it was I picked 2 people, or you picked 2 people, I picked 2 people, and then we put them in a poll, and the fans got to decide the names of the awards too. So I love the interactivity of it. I love getting the fans' perspectives on things, on everything, not just the awards, but the names. So yeah, but that was the long and short of it. Was I was inspired by real sports, wanted to make the awards a little bit more prestigious, and I think we accomplished both of those things in a really swell way. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, we did. And so I guess it's time to go into our awards now. For this year, we dropped the best rivalry and we dropped most charismatic. The reason for that, for rivalry, there is in Japanese wrestling in the last couple of years, it's been really difficult to follow along with year-long rivalries. They often are cooking below other stuff, and then they explode at some point. But it's not like that. You can really point to it being like a real feud. That's, for example, on television in AEW, WWE. That's a feud for 5 to 6 weeks, and then there's a blow off at the pay-per-view. That got harder and harder to compile something. And most charismatic, in my opinion, always was a very subjective award where you could basically put in anybody. So we canceled that, but we will definitely talk about some rivalries and we'll talk about some charismatic wrestlers in this on this show. And instead of that, we brought in the Yoshin Liga Best Junior Heavyweight Award. That I'm very excited for because we are doing that for the first time, and we'll have to see how the voting unfolded, because you got your own opinion on who should be a junior and who should not be, and we'll see about that. But first, Dylan, since we got so many votes from the listeners, and since it also was a very close vote, why don't we start with the Best Foreigner Award, and we start with the listeners? Do you want to read off who won the Stan Hansen Award?
Absolutely, Strigga. The Stan Hansen Award for the half year, the winner with it was a close vote here. I will say that. It was very close. We got multiple. When I sent you the awards that I listed, I kind of separated the people who only got one vote versus people who got multiple votes. And there was 9 people with multiple votes here. So there was people with multiple votes. But the big two, it came down to 2 people. And the winner was Zack Sabre Jr. from Japan.
Yes. Zack Sabre ultimately not like a runaway win because Chris Brooks came very close with 17. And I think that Zack Sabre Jr. is one that you can surely get behind. He has had many great matches in and outside of Japan this year. And I think him branching outside of Japan helped him once again here, because the Best Foreign Award traditionally is an award where people are voting for wrestlers that they know from America or from Europe. And I think that it partly is the case here as well with Zack. He also has a great run with the New Japan Television title, and also a great storyline going with TMDK and his junior and his rookie member with Kosei Fujita. So I can get behind this vote for Zack Sabre Jr. being number 1.
Yeah, I think he has to be up there. And foreign award, the Best Foreigner Award, that was one where, it can be slim picking sometimes. A lot of times there's not that many that
especially during the pandemic.
Oh yeah, that's true. Maybe we're seeing it already open up with different people come in. Zach, I don't know if this is controversial. I mean, I liked his run. He would be up there for me. He'd probably be top 3, maybe even top 5 at worst. But I think that his TV title run, it's been good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a quality wrestler. But he hasn't really stood out to me as much as some other people. I think the TV title run, I mean, we said it multiple times that we thought the way they handle it, a lot of times going up to the time limit, they started to change that with this Cobb deal like that they've had recently. Right. I think it was a good vote, though. I really have no issue with Zach winning. I thought that if anything, you look at some of the names on the list, and you've got a few on there that you could point to, but he's up there. Like, he would definitely be, like I said, a top 3 guy for me.
Yes, I got him on my top 3. to be quite honest. I bounced back and forth between some of the names that I had. I got him on number 3, and I think that's where he ranks ultimately between all the others that have been wrestling in Japan, all the other foreigners. Because, for example, number 2 for the listeners was Chris Brooks. And when you compare Chris Brooks to Zack Sabre Jr., and when you compare where these two have been at the beginning of the year and where they are now, I think Chris Brooks made the bigger leap, and Chris Brooks had the one outstanding match more than Zack Sabre Jr. had in the finals of the King of DDT. And not only has he been outstanding in that match, but he has also been steadily very good this year. When you look at his match guide on Cage Match, it's not only singles matches, but it's mostly tags, but they are voted mostly like in the 7 range. And then his match with Higuchi has a 9 point whatever rating. So Chris Brooks definitely is one that I can get. I mean, I can get behind it. And there's a case for Zack Sabre Jr. to be number 1 here. For me, it definitely was Chris Brooks. So not agreeing with the listeners, but agreeing with at least some portion of the listeners. And I'm really looking forward to the match that he is going to have with Yuji Hino. He got injured a couple of weeks ago, but now made his return and is facing Yuji Hino at the big show in a sumo hall on the 23rd. And I'm actually, Dylan, pretty positive on that he's winning the QOD championship.
Yeah, Hino's run's been horrible, so it would be stupid if Brooks has a one. Brooks, he had that big match and not a lot else, in my opinion. Like, there's some fun tags, but that's about as far as he's gone this year. I think that that win was like so great. Like him winning the tournament, not just that the match itself was so great, but the moment of him winning was so strong, and I think that really lived with everyone's memory. He had the injury for the last portion of the half year as well. That's another thing we have to talk about. He was out for like the last month of it as well.
Yep.
To me, he wasn't on my radar. I don't think he's had a great year outside of that moment, and I think that he'll win the title for sure, just because they have no other options. Like at this point, I mean, I predicted that he would win the tournament when I did the previews for it on the other show. And he did. And I think they need a spark, and he's the perfect kind of guy, a great ambassador to the promotion. Has really grown over the years, as a wrestler. When he first came into where he's at now, he's way better. But I just think the companies, like, it's his surroundings that have really caused him not, like, the quantity just isn't there compared to some other people, in my opinion. But I went with E.O. Del Dr. Winder Jr., actually, as the number 1 foreigner for me. I think if you look at him, you want to take a leap forward, because remember when he won the title that the late November last year, everyone was so disappointed that Inamura didn't win. And his N1 run last year, he was among the lower tier guys. He wasn't bad, but it was similar to what I said about Brooks, where it was like, oh, it was all fun and good, it was okay, but nothing really stand out compared to the last year's N1. Then this year came along, he has just taken a massive leap forward and become one of the better workers in all of Japan to me. If you look at his title run, it's been consistent. You've had great matches up and down with all kinds of different people, even people that you wouldn't think of as great workers. And it's just going to continue with this run here. I mean, we just saw the match with him and Amakusa the other day, which was a wonderful match. And I just think this guy's grown so much. I watched this guy for so many years in Lucha Libre, and he was a nothing player in Lucha. Like, he was not a great wrestler by any stretch of the imagination. And when you look at his Noah run last year, he was teaming with Rene Dupree as a tag team. Wasn't exactly the greatest work rate team or anything like that. Did you see stuff in the N1? As I said, he didn't stand out. With this title, though, I mean, he's been top to bottom one of the best workers in the company, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have him in another category where I'll talk about him a bit. I got him in my honorable mentions on number 4, just below Zack Sabre Jr. And when we look at the listeners here, for example, when you get to number 3, we have Will Ospreay. And that is something that I want to address, because I always look at foreigners and how many matches they had in Japan as well before I really want to rank them in the top best foreigners. And Dr. Wagner Jr., he has had almost up to 30 matches, and that's fine, I think, because the schedule of Noah has been not that stressful this year. But for example, like Will Ospreay has only wrestled 19 matches in Japan this year. Lots of them were really outstanding. That is absolutely true, but the number is just not that impressive in my opinion. The same goes for Titan. I would have voted for Titan as well because he had some really outstanding matches, but much like Ospreay, also only 19 matches in Japan. So that is also where I sometimes cut the line for me as well here in this category, which is why I mentioned it. Chris Brooks, number 1. Zack Sabre Jr., number 3, and my number 2 is Diamante. He also was out for a couple of weeks after the Keiji Muto show, I think, but then he came back and started the storyline once again with Ultimo Dragon, and obviously has been one of the crucial guys in Dragon Gate over the last couple of years. He came in 2019. You can hear the story when you listen to Open the Voice Gate. He didn't return to Mexico during the pandemic, and Jay said it, quote, he became family there. And he is an integral part of the promotion, integral part of Zebrats up until that storyline that ended up with the cage match where he lost his mask ultimately in this incredibly tremendous emotional moment for a lot of people. The guy is the absolute glue when it comes to 6-man matches. He has incredible chemistry with, for example, guys like Jackie Funky Kamei. Just tremendous stuff all the time when I watch him. I love this guy.
Yeah, he's great, obviously. Like at the end of the year, well, we'll see what happens with him, but I could definitely see him making a big run. Bigger than we got here. He wasn't really a factor in these votes, unfortunately. But I think that after what happened at the cage match, like I said, end of the year, if things go well, he'll definitely be a guy that steps up. And he's another guy, I mean, not dissimilar from Wagner, actually, where he came in. He was better in Mexico than Wagner was, for sure. He's another guy I've watched for years. But he had an inauspicious leaving of CMLL. And for years, he was this, indie floating around doing nothing, for years. Not a factor at all. And he got a totally new life in Dragon Gate, and now he's grown to be, again, much like Wagner, one of their best workers, week in, week out type of deal on there. So you got to give Diamante credit on there. To me, he was definitely on my short list. Ospreay, he actually, because when I first saw this, I thought, what? He was he must have had one match in Japan all year. But he actually had more than I thought. If he had kept up his pace from the first 3 months, he basically would have been a regular guy in New Japan. Did some stuff. Obviously had the injury in the New Japan Cup. And since then, he hasn't really returned. We'll see what happens in the G1, where he'll put a little bit more meat on that plate. But I'm like you. He just didn't have the quantity compared to some other people. Another person I like to shout out was Akari from Pure J and all over the Joshi scene. If you look at her run, I think she's grown into one of the true, similar to what we talked about with these others, one of the workhorse girls in this case of the scene, where she just did great work top to bottom through all her companies, obviously working a lot of freelance. Pure J schedule isn't exactly strenuous, but she's held up that flag, been one of their best people that they've had, worked at all these different companies and in freelance shows. She's become one of the most well-regarded freelance, not freelance technically, but freelance in terms of wrestling all over the place that you could see. So I really wanted to shout out Akari. I'm very happy that she got more than one vote. She got onto the top floor list there.
Why do you have Jason Lee?
Yeah, he's up there. I think that much like Zach, I mean, as a wrestler, if you want to talk about skills, Jason would have to be top tier. I think, unfortunately, his title run wasn't as great as it could have been overall with the Brave Gate, and it was cool to see him win. But not a lot stand out this year to me. Just a very solid, good worker. Like I said, not dissimilar from Zach, in my opinion, where it's you get a lot of good, nothing super stand out, I would say, this year. But, I mean, as a wrestler, I respect his game a lot. I think that talent-wise, he's among the best.
Yeah, I was also very disappointed, to be quite honest, with this Bravegate title run because, like, when he won the title, everybody was like, okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to get on the bandwagon now, and we're ready for a real signature Bravegate run. But they basically only used his run to point out that there are no signature Bravegate runs anymore. And they went to this Ishin storyline where he said nobody really wants to win back the championship when they lost them. And it didn't lead to these great Bravegate matches, to be quite honest. So I think he had more that he could have shown, but ultimately it didn't work out that way. So he wasn't in consideration for me, to be honest.
And not to mention, like, we were coming off of a year almost of Hyo and Minorita as champions. Not exactly having match of the year candidates, top to bottom. And when Jason came in, it's like, okay, now we've got somebody to call you back to the old days of the Bravegate. And not even the old days. Not that long ago, you had people like Okuda, Ishida, SBK having great runs, being, some of the guys that were carrying the company as Bravegate champion. And this
I wouldn't say that Okuda was at any point carrying the company, but
no. I mean, he was the best worker when he was the champion, though. Like, having the best matches.
That's one brief point.
Well, it was brief, but it still happened. But he was a great worker, like, regardless of whatever. I think Okuda is a talented guy. It's sad that we don't see him more right now, in my opinion, just as a wrestler. But him, Ishida, SBK, being top guys and having great matches. We weren't getting that for a while now, and we might not get it again. And we didn't even get it during this run either. So unfortunately, but when he won, I had hope that we're going to go back to those days.
Yes. I want to give him one more shout out from the European perspective. She only got one vote, but I want to mention Tekla from Austria. Tekla became a regular with Stardom. When did that actually, in 2021, she became a regular for Stardom? Yes, 21. And has been there basically all the time. And not only has she been a great wrestler in these mostly in these tag situations, but she also has been an ambassador. She's been, I think, meeting up with the Austrian embassy in Japan as well and having a presentation there. So that's great as well. So a great ambassador for her country as well. And just a steady worker on the Stardom roster.
Yeah, she's good. She's always been somebody very cool to watch. Hopefully they have some big stuff planned for her in the future. Hopefully she can get in that 5-star next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that is it for our first award, Dylan. I would say you continue first when we go to the Jun Akiyama Legacy Rookie of the Year. Before you start, I want to say that I'm really dreading that my choice didn't go through here because I really thought that would be a nice touch for Animal Hamaguchi. It was my proposal to have the award named after him because Animal Hamaguchi, you just have to look at who he produced in the last 20 years or however long he has been, maybe 30, 40 years, I don't know. I haven't actually looked that up. For however long he has been running his school, and he's still doing that at his high age right now. I wanted to name the award the Animal Hamaguchi Memorial Award because this guy has been producing rookies left and right.
Yeah, I think that Hamaguchi, his contributions to Japanese wrestling is like kind of understated sometimes, but very important, like one of the best trainers. Even something like LIJ, like always looking towards the Hamaguchi dojo to bring people in there. So you got to keep that in mind. But yeah, I think he would have been a great choice. All of the votes would have been great, and Akiyama is probably, that's the one I was thinking of as like the top rookie, like that he came in like the supernova type of rookie player, and that's where people voted. But your idea was very good as well.
In my heart, he will always be Animal Hamaguchi.
Yeah, he's the trainer, but he's not known as his actual rookie run, however. So people voted a little differently. It was different perspectives, as we said at the start of the show here. But the winner of this award, this was a blowout, and it was obvious.
I was going to ask Dylan, who but Yuma Anzai do we have?
That's the thing. I mean, we knew Anzai was going to win if there was any sense to it. And just to be sure, you said Brooks was your winner for Foreigner, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm keeping track of these awards here. Like I said,
yeah, Brooks, Diamante, and Sechsebei.
Okay, the winner's the only one that I will keep place. Like number one is the most important. The rest are superfluous, kind of, but not for the votes though, because the votes tell us interesting things. So when you look at Anzai, he was the obvious choice. To me, the second best was somebody who didn't get any votes. Actually, Ryo Inoue, who is getting a title shot versus Lindemann. Very soon. I just think this guy is spectacular. Great worker. I think he's actually better in the ring than Anzai. Anzai is more of an all-around prospect, but Inoue has had a fantastic year. Somebody that I think that deserves a ton of recognition. Great style. They gave him his first win. Yet another person has surpassed Dan Tamura in the All Japan hierarchy, and just as a worker. So we saw that take place on the last big show, and he's awesome. I love that guy so much. I think he's a great, great worker. And the other one would be Masada, who was the second best. Like I said, still way behind Anzai, but he got the second most votes, was Takeshi Masada from DDT, who he could be, they want him to be the next Takeshita, and with good reason. He's got the skills that he could grow into that. And I think that he's a tremendous talent. He would have been in my top list as well. So, I think he was a great second choice.
Yeah, that's great choices, actually. I got Ryo Inoue and Masada in my honorable mentions. And another one that I got in my honorable mentions that I want to talk about a bit is Himawari of Tokyo Yoshi Pro Wrestling. When this current set of rookies debuted in TJPW, and I've talked about that a couple of months ago when we last talked about TJPW, I was thinking that Wakana Uehara would be the one that I get behind the most, because she was standing out more than Himawari was at first. But slowly but surely, Himawari really impressed inside the ring and recently had her first main event match. I didn't track if that was really her first main event, but I haven't seen her in any main event before, and she was good there. And she's this very happy character, but once she steps inside the ring, she also has a very mean streak about her when she, for example, locks on her half crab. That already looks very good. She moves around very good, and I think that she'll be someone that we'll hear from a lot more this coming year and next year. And I bounced back and forth between her and another rookie from TJPW, to be honest, and I ultimately decided that I want to put her in my top 3, and that is Toga. At first, I didn't really care a lot about her amidst all the other rookies that debuted, like Himawari and Uehara, much like I said. And then there's still Julia Nagano, of course, and all these girls that came through the dojo in the last couple of years there. Toga, in the last 6 to 10 weeks, I would say, made a giant leap. She was in multi-man matches for a long time, and she's still in a lot of multi-man matches, but something clicked inside her that she is now a completely different character from what TJPW usually produces, in lots of happy girls that run around and scream a lot, and Toga is just this stoic character that will just hit you with a lariat and with another lariat and with another lariat and will just look at you with a stone face. She moves around extremely well already, and she could really be amongst the roster. She's not that tall, but amongst the roster, she seems like she's tall, and she could be a real gatekeeper when it comes to championships down the line. And I hope that they produce her and put her in a way that she can be like this. She would be perfect in a role for a bodyguard, for example, if they ever went to this storyline for a different character inside TJPW. So Toga is definitely someone who caught my eyes in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, she's good. They're all kind of good, actually. All the TJPW rookies. You had Uehara get a couple votes. You had Shino get some votes from the Up girls, and Toga as well got a vote. So they've got a great list of prospects, similar to DDT, Dragon 8. There's a lot of young wrestlers that have come along really well. You have to hope that they can grow into something, something even bigger.
I mean, we would have talked about Mochizuki Jr. more on here if he hadn't been injured in a crucial time in the year for him and a storyline that would have probably unfolded with him and his dad in M3K. He would have been in a signature match probably at Kobe World in a significant storyline, but then he got injured. So I didn't really consider him in this half year, but we know how extremely talented this guy is. But there is just others that caught my attention more than him right now.
Yeah, a great wrestler and all, but the truth is, like, Anzai's the best one. So, I mean, it's hard to compare these TJPW wrestlers.
Exactly.
On his level.
Of course. I mean, Yuma Anzai is my number one as well. There would be foolish not to talk about him.
Yeah.
And the way that he's just wrestling for the Triple Crown against Yuji Nagata with 50 matches on his career is just outstanding and tremendous. And he has formed that many great spots already for his character. With his jumping knee alone is just completely outstanding. My number two, actually, I thought about it quite a bit, and I came to the conclusion that it's going to be Kosei Fujita. I think he also got some votes. I think a couple of votes from the listeners. Fujita is one of my favorite wrestlers right now to follow in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He, by the way, made his debut August 24, 2021, so he barely makes the cut here. June 30 is, of course, the cut. At the beginning of the year, he came into TMDK as this new program that they have for some of their young lions, that they don't send them on excursion. They have them in storylines within New Japan and maybe then send them on excursion. And one of the key storylines that he has been part of this year was he is learning how to do the Japanese leg roll clutch. And slowly but surely, he got to do it better and better and better. He was kind of robotic at first doing that, and his opponents still escaped from that hold, but that has been a real cute detail to follow along his way. And him being like this student to Zack Sabre Jr. has been a cool storyline. So I really like Kosei Fujita.
Yeah, he's good. Definitely a fine rookie. Like I said, a lot of great young talent in Japan right now. He is the fourth place voter actually. So he's one of the ones that got even more than a lot of other people. So he's up there. You had Anzai, Masada, Mochizuki Jr., and Fujita, and then a big tie of a lot of people.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the Jun Akiyama Legacy Award for the Rookie of the Year. And now, Dylan, it gets interesting. For most underrated, the listeners could not decide. Let's keep it that. We have a tie on top. And there's a lot of people, a lot of wrestlers that got mentioned here from the listeners.
Yeah, I will shout out too. I love seeing Hiroki Sakai get 2 votes. The 48-year-old rookie that we had here from our Heat Up family representing. Yes. Yeah, right now we got to give it up to him. A great shoot style type of guy. Underrated.
The astronauts got a vote here.
Yeah, underrated. I mean, the entire scene basically got voted in. If you could think of a wrestler, they were probably got a vote for.
Okada didn't get one. Okay.
No, I think he might be one of the few that didn't. But yeah, pretty much everybody just voted for a different person for this. At the end of the day. There were 5 people that got more than 1 vote. I mean, like I said, there's a ton of votes for just 1 people, but we got a few that got 2, and now it's up to us to see if we can break this tie or not. And those 5 are Mirai, Doki, Big Boss Shimizu, Keno, and Manabu Soya. What are your takes on these 5 here?
All right. So Mirai, can see that from what you always tell me about the Stardom fan base. But I think at this point in 2023, a lot of people have come around and seen what Mira can do.
Well, look no further than her winning the title, and some very, very bad things were said by some people that I was kind of embarrassed by reading, actually.
Yeah, that's the thing about in the last couple of months, I've really not read a lot of takes on Twitter or anywhere else. I really don't go on Reddit or anywhere, so I don't come across these takes. So that was just my impression.
But hey, it's nothing new to me. These same people that hate on her were the same ones that said Arisa Hoshiki wasn't that good and should lose the title. So it's not. It doesn't bother me too much. But there were some really stupid things that were said about her winning the title, and she should have. And she should have. It was the completely correct decision for her to win the title. That thing, but whatever.
Doki, I don't think that you can classify him as most underrated anymore. I think by now everybody and their grandmother has seen what Doki can do, how great he is. So I don't think that he is underrated anymore. Big Boss Shimizu. He is someone that I also have in my top 5. He didn't make the cut. I have him on my number 4 because I thought of a different Dragon Gate wrestler that I will mention in a bit. But I definitely can see Big Boss Shimizu. Even in storyline, he is underrated because he's not part of the Reiwa 6 and now needs to prove that he in fact is good within Dragon Gate. And that's a great storyline.
Yeah, I mean, he's awesome. I've always been a fan of his. It's really his booking that is the thing that holds him back. But they're in a better space than they were with him, like in years past, I would say. Better than Bokuto Dragon, at least, I would say. But yeah, he would be a better pick than Doki, I would say. Like, I don't think Doki is very underrated. I think he's a guy that gets a lot of, everyone likes him. So, and Shimizu, I think, is a guy that if you're a DG fan, and you weren't watching when he's Big R, you know how great he can be, then you probably, I could definitely see that.
Who thinks that Keno is underrated?
Yeah, that was a bad pick. There's not a lot of bad votes. That may have been. Well, here's the thing. And I'm trying to rationalize things. I didn't make this vote, but I'll try and approach it. I'm trying to look at things from a new perspective here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you think that Keno is the unquestionably greatest wrestler. Then I guess you could say he was underrated, not rated appropriately, because everyone in the world should think he's the greatest. But if you think about his general reception, I think everyone ranks him as listen, he was one of the top people. Who knows? We may come away. He may be the winner of the MVP by the time we're done. He was right up there for MVP votes. So it's hard for me to rationalize that. Why he's an MVP and also most underrated.
Yeah. That's definitely not his category. Manabu Soya. That is actually my winner for this one.
Really?
Yes. Manabu Soya is a character, a wrestler that gets, I don't want to say that this guy is in any ways great or anything. But the comments that I see about him are that he's an absolutely boring and bad wrestler. And that's not the case. He's not a great wrestler by any means, but he has had some real cool matches this year. I point to the one with El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. I was so surprised how well Soya performed in that match with Wagner Jr. He has been part of Keno's tag team journey as well, and I think he's been a crucial part of that journey and has been part of many, many good tag matches this year. For example, the one March 21st with Keno against Nomura and Aoyagi. He has had a formidable, I would say, Champion Carnival. Nobody really stood out during the Champion Carnival. He's had a good match with Shuji Ishikawa in April. Then we have him. We have a 6-man where he performed well in May. Go Nakajima versus Keno and it's a tag match actually. It's not a 6-man tag. Go and Nakajima against Keno and Manabu Soya. Then the tag match where they lost the tag belts to Kento Miyahara and Yuma Aoyagi. I think he was good there as well. So I don't think that he gets the recognition he deserves. Not saying that he is a very good wrestler, much like I pointed out, but he, in my opinion, deserves better than he gets, the reputation that he gets.
I think that would have been true last year. I think most people recognized him as having a really good year this year, though. If you look at his run, I mean, it's been all good matches. I think the thing that helps him the most is teaming with Kenoh. I've really seen a lot of people come around on him as somebody to look at as like a good guy, like on the team. He's a good wrestler. Like there's nothing wrong with Soya at all. And like he's got a big spotlight this year with Kenoh, and I think a lot of people have come around. I don't really think of him as underrated, to be honest. But this is a subjective award.
Yeah, it really is. Much like we see it from the votes that we got here.
Yeah, who's to say when you when you look at these other votes here?
Like from these 5 that we have, I would pick Soya over Shimizu, and you would probably pick Shimizu over Soya a lot.
Shimizu, I think, is more underrated than Soya, like on the DG fan base.
That's true.
I think that I was actually going to go with somebody else, but then when she won the title, I saw all those comments. I really have to go back to Mariah again. I was thinking about someone else. You know who I think's underrated that didn't get any votes?
Mm-hmm.
I think Rin, like Narita. I don't think if you look at New Japan, everyone talks about Tsuji and Umino much more than, and a lot of it's booking as well. You know, because when he came back, he had that amazing match with Ishii. Everyone was pounding the table for him to win the TV title, and then he didn't. And he disappeared. And now he's going to change the minds in this G1, in my opinion, with this Reiwa Three Musketeers act that they've decided to go on. But even then, everyone still focuses on Umino and Tsuji more. So I think that's somebody who I would consider underrated, even though he's a great wrestler. I think he doesn't get talked about nearly as much as his contemporaries, when I think he's a better wrestler than those guys, in my opinion.
So I want to quickly go through some of the names that I thought of for my top 3 that didn't in the end make the cut. One is Daiju Wakamatsu from 2AW, who is now a deathmatch wrestler in Big Japan Pro Wrestling, and I think he's playing a great role there. But of course, due to Big Japan being where they are, he doesn't really get talked about a lot, but he adapted to the deathmatch style very well, I thought. It deserves some recognition. From Great, I have Hayato Tamura. I don't think that he gets talked about enough for how great he actually is. He's getting the title match with T-Hawk now in a Sumo Hall, so I think that will change in the second half of 2023. He was stuck with the G Infinity and in multi-man matches for a lot of this first half of the year. So that is his shout-out here. And the underdog of underdogs in Dragon Gate, Jackie Funky Kamai. He needs more people talking about how great he is.
He needs to win matches.
Exactly.
What he needs, first and foremost. Because I think everyone really likes him. I mean, last year, him and Jason were in the match of the whole year, probably, for Dragon Gate, that tag match. The one good match in Kobe World last year, the tag match with Diamante and Shun. Great work. I'm a huge fan of JFK. I think he's one of the best in DG. Him and Jason both. Tamura, I think, is a great wrestler. He's always been like the guy I thought that you could really turn into something, like, and build a company around. And he's done a great job in the tag team with Shimatani. He's a guy that, you know, you can always look at. Wakamatsu, longtime 2AW guy, and now in the deathmatch scene. You know, I will say this. I think Big Japan they've taken a big step forward since that Endless Survivor show, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of fans, I think people are much more interested in them than they have been in a long time ever since that. I think Okabayashi leaving it has put some more eyes on it as well, maybe for nostalgia's sake or whatever. But you're seeing more with Big Japan. I think they've done a good job the last couple of months of turning things and at least taking steps forward, even though, you know, it's not like they're threatening to be the number one company or anything, but I think we're seeing more and more love for them recently. So I think that could change. And deathmatch, I think, is, well, especially in Japan, I mean, we see it, that it's kind of, you know, a dying art form, kind of, in terms of popularity. So they're trying, though. Like, that's basically what the deathmatch scene in Big Japan is now. Guys who were normal wrestlers and now they're moving. They have to move them by necessity. Yeah. You know, pretty much their whole division is like that now, and he's another one. So yeah, he's good though.
My number 3, I would like to name this the Hiroshi Tanahashi Bias Award, because it also happens to me. It's more of a personal award than anything else, but that happens to me quite often too. Daisuke Sekimoto, Dylan. He's a guy that a lot of people say, oh, this guy is getting old and he can't do what he did anymore in years past. But he has shown this year in multiple matches that he is still right there when you need him. He adapted his style. He changed his style around a bit. Less big suplexes in a lot of matches. But when he needs this big suplexes, he is still absolutely there. The match against the Astronauts in late May, the match with Okabayashi against the Violent Giants in June in All Japan Pro Wrestling proved that. I think Daisuke Sekimoto is one that you can name here because people think he's toast while he still is not.
First of all, we already have a Tanahashi trophy. It's something else. So
but not the Tanahashi Bias trophy.
Well, we can't give 2 Tanahashi awards on here. Not that I would be against that, actually. Sekimoto, the thing is, the fact is, if you compare him to where he was, then you see that actually he is toast. Kind of like if you were looking at him 7 years ago to now. But even still, toast Sekimoto is still better than a lot of other wrestlers. And when the time comes, because there's a lot of times where he's not that anymore. But if you look at him in big matches, yeah, he could deliver when called upon. And we see that especially in tag matches, I would say. But the match with Okabayashi was okay, but then you compare it to stuff they did in the past, and it's like, oh, it's not as good actually. And then obviously compared to Aoki and Okabayashi, you see it drop off. So he's still good, but I do think it's hard for me to say that he hasn't dropped off compared to where he was, and it hasn't lost a few steps actually.
He did. He certainly did. Yes. My number 2 is it's kind of a legacy award, but it's also an award that this guy deserved when you look at the first half of his year, and he opened up a lot in Dragon Gate. That this guy actually has been very good all the time and has gotten slack for no good reason whatsoever, and that is Dragon Kid. I think Dragon Kid has been so tremendously underrated in the last couple of decades that he's been wrestling in Dragon Gate. And this year, they kind of hid him in the mid-card, doing a lot of mid-card tag matches. He had this run with the Dragon Daya in the Rey de Parejas. But even then, I thought his matches were really good all the time, but he really didn't get any recognition whatsoever. Also part of course, being in the mid-card. But then he got the storyline with Ultimo Dragon, and everybody thought that, he's going to be there. He's going to be fine in this match, but not really important. But in the end, he was very important for the cage match. That obviously is cut off, but still, though, Dragon Kid, I think, when you look back, really underrated.
Man, he was my guy when I first got into DG all those years ago. Sekimoto, even though I kind of disagree, I think it's a better, like that. Your reasoning behind it is a good example of what most underrated should be, actually. Like for Sekimoto, I think that was a good idea. DK, I mean, when he was announced for that cage match, everyone's reaction was, oh, he's the good wrestler they put in so Ultimo wouldn't have to bump. Like, that was like 99% of the reaction I saw. So I think everybody respects him. Everyone was really hyped for him teaming with Daya, actually, because they thought that Kid would join DeCourage, which a lot of people wanted and still want, even to this day. And I hope that they do as well. So Kid, he's a great performer. I have nothing bad to say.
That's true. That he is definitely. But for example, when I listen to Open the Voice Gate, they definitely have different takes from the Dragon Gate audience that he is not that well respected as we think he should be.
Well, I mean, I love him. I wish that he had gotten a title run. Over the end. So, yeah, he could be a little underrated. I think it's just the roster sometimes it's going to depend on your push a lot of times.
Yeah.
He definitely doesn't have that. But like I said, I've not heard any of this DK slander, and I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, same for me with the Mirai slander. So
unfortunately, that's like very widespread.
Yeah, but I got my echo chamber here, so I'm not listening.
Oh, okay.
So who do you got?
Like I said, I would have went with Narita, but after that win, I went with Mirai.
Yeah.
Another
Right.
tie. We're still tied with Soya and Mirai.
Soya Mirai. That's fine. I think we can go with that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll need to put out another poll, and maybe Mirai wins. Who knows?
Maybe Soya win. Like Soya, well, maybe not with his new gear change. So now he's going to be overrated. Now he went back to the young boy.
His new shiny gear. Hey.
Maybe Keno will win because his gear is much better.
Yeah, maybe. So, most improved, Dylan. Looking at the listeners, we got a clear winner in Master Wato. Then quite distanced Zanada on number 2. And we got a tie on number 3. Strong Machine J, Madoka Kikuta, and Mariah May. Who do you have?
To me, I think there was 2 people that really took big leaps this year, and they were none of those that we talked about. Thing with Wato, his improvement was more last year than this year, and the push has followed it, and now people are catching on. But if you go back last year, I was telling people that Wato had improved, and I think people just wanted to see him as a joke, and now he's got a push behind him, and the fans are behind him. Now they suddenly see that. But he improved last year more than anything, in my opinion. So I would say that. Somebody like Sonata, I mean, he's improved compared to where he was. But again, he's been kind of very boring and average for a while now. Like he was at this level before. And like before that, he was just like one of the worst wrestlers in any roster. So yes, he's improved over the years, but I wouldn't say he took a big step. Maybe in look, you could say. I honestly think that's what it is with a lot of this. Like because he changed his look, people like him more now. The other ones were all true. Well, Mariah, the thing with her is she improved from our own preconceived notions of her. She just came here this year. Where did she didn't have anywhere to improve from, but she is good. Like people thought, blonde, hot model, Brit Res person, she probably isn't that great. But then you see her wrestle, and actually she stands out above everybody who, like all the other foreigners, which I said, and she retweeted as well. So I know she agrees with me on there at one point that she stood out. So the thing is, we underrated her coming in, and she proved us wrong. And I include myself in that because I was not excited. I didn't know anything about her. I thought, this really young wrestler, like less than 40 matches or something on Cage Match before she came in, looks like somebody that may go to WWE one day or something. But you look at her wrestling, and she was really good for a long time now, like much better than a lot of people. The other 2, the Dragon Gate guys, I definitely agree with, have improved this year, like taking steps forward. But for me, my picks were, and here's the thing with this. Who has taken a bigger leap from somebody who sucked for decades and now has by far the best run of his career, and Yasushi Kanda?
Yeah. He's definitely up there.
Compare this year to any year he's had in the past.
Yeah.
And like that has to be the winner to me. Nobody's taken a bigger step forward than that. I mean, he was probably the worst, if not the worst, one of the worst people on the Dragon Gate roster for not just last year, but for years and years and years. And now he's been one of the highlights in the tag team with Susumu. So I cannot look past that, because there's other guys who have made improvements. There's a lot of great people that have made steps forward, but nobody started as the worst worker on the roster, like he was.
And he's having blowout tag matches now.
And there's a limit to that. We're already seeing that, to be honest.
Sure, but I mean, much like you said, where did he come from? He came from teaming with Takashi Yoshida on the undercard and sucking.
Yeah, he's
sucking
terrible.
The wind out of the building.
Yeah, like somebody like Wagner was my other pick, but he was average, and then became really good. And Kanda was 20 times worse than Wagner was. So
I really couldn't decide between the 2, between Kanda and Wagner Jr. I also had them up here, but now that you say it, when you say it like that, I definitely have to go with Kanda as well.
Yes, my argument worked, baby.
Yeah, it totally did. But Wagner definitely, I think he deserves some.
Yeah, he does.
Here.
He does.
He definitely improved. It's not only the in-ring portion of it, but you mentioned it. When he first came in with Rene Dupree, that was still pre-pandemic when they won the tag team title. He was just standing there like he didn't know what to do. He didn't really belong there at this point in his career, but he was there. But now he has grown into this position of where he is right now as one of the top foreigners that they have in the company. Even the top foreigner, you could say. You can make the argument for that. So that is really a big improvement. That's a great choice. I definitely need to make a shout out to Mina Shirakawa, comparing to where she was last year. And when you look at her right now, drastic improvement as well she had the part of her presentation always for her, but now the in-ring part has grown up to that as well.
I feel, like Wagner, he was tag team champion with Rene Dupree last year. On top of it, like people forget that run.
Yeah.
See, like I said, so he still was like there the whole time. But Shirakawa, I feel similar to Wato in that she improved last year, like with her big step up. By the end of the year, everyone was clamoring for her to win the white belt after her match with Kamatani, which ended tragically, unfortunately. But she cut this amazing promo afterwards. Like everybody was rallying behind her. In the 5-star, she had some really good matches last year too. Her match with Mirai was like so good as a technical match. That's like skills that I didn't really know she had on there. But I really think her improvement came last year. But her push has improved this year, and I think people will rally behind that. Even though, she's a champion right now, tag team with Mariah. So.
I still want to make a little bit of a case for Wato because I have him in my honorable mentions, Dylan. I still think that the run that he has had in the Best of the Super Junior wouldn't have been possible at this level last year. I think last year he still wasn't that good, and he has grown into a person that now is able to main event with confidence, and that wasn't the case last year. That is why I think that a lot of people have clamored to Wato and the storyline that he is still the underdog going for the big ones in the junior division.
And I mean, the match with Titan was better than any match he had last year. Like, there's no question he has taken steps forward, but I think his big improvement was last year, like to where he was becoming a solid guy, a good worker. People underrated him because of the look and. Well, obviously, he was horrible when he started. Again, like much like Kenta, like when you start off that low, sometimes that stink can follow you around for a little while. Like same with Yoshihashi in the past, where after he became good, people still underrated him. And Wato kind of had that for a little while. And now that's all gone. I think the Tokyo Dome, where the crowd rallied behind him, I think that changed a lot of people's opinions on him. And like I said, the match with Titan was just a fantastic match. And that's something that, he didn't have those matches before. So he's definitely improved. I just thought that he had already made it a jump last year.
Yeah, okay.
It's good.
One more mention I want to talk about is the Rising Hayato. It's not like that he drastically improved his wrestling, but this year, in this first 6 months of the year, his ranking and his standing within All Japan Pro Wrestling improved very much so. First, of course, with his gimmick, he's now this Ikemen character, this good-looking guy character, and that has helped him, in my opinion, a lot to gain more fans in All Japan. And when you look at the fans' reaction when him and Atsuki Aoyagi challenged Kento Miyahara and Yuma Aoyagi for the World Tag Team title, the fans were completely behind that idea of these two juniors challenging for the heavyweight tag belt. So I think that this guy in his development deserves a shout out as well.
I mean, at the start of last year, he had that horrible match with Sugi for the title.
Oh, Jesus.
Just a really bad situation there, like really bad match. He really kept improving as time went along, and once they got the character at the end of last year, again, I feel the same way. Like his improvement was last year. But I think he definitely improved. He continues to improve as time goes along. But, I mean, you compare where he was at the start of 2022 to the December of 2022, and he was way, way ahead. And I think we've just seen him continue to grow to the point where a lot of people think he's the best junior they have, even over Atsuki.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, and I think he's a better all-around wrestler than Aoyagi actually. And I've been saying that for a while. I thought he should have been the one to beat Doi, and it feels like maybe they're going to just they're going to fix that.
He's definitely winning the title, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to like basically do the same thing with Lindemann and have him be the one to win. So like they're kind of rectifying the thing there. So yeah, Hayato definitely improved, a great wrestler. Like I think he's one of the better junior heavyweights in Japan actually at this point, all around with the character and the wrestling.
Yes. Yeah, I think we got that award done right now. Looking at, I thought it was so funny that in the Most Improved Award, All Japan Pro Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling both got a vote. So, yeah, why don't we right now go to Best Promotion, Dylan? Who do you have? Oh, no, let's tackle it from a different perspective because actually my top three match up with the listeners' top three in New Japan Pro Wrestling, number 1, Stardom, number 2, and Dragon Gate, number 3. Now yours.
Yeah, I mean, this is a blowout vote here. Our things won't make too much of a difference, but I think this has been a real interesting year overall because I don't think too many promotions have been very all-around consistent outside of the winner, which was New Japan. Like, to me, they were the obvious pick. I would put Dragon Gate number 2 and number 3, like, because like there's flaws with all the others. Like there's good and bad. I mean, there's flaws with Dragon Gate. Yes. I mean, their build up to Kobe World was like very poor.
That was my reasoning to not put them any higher. I mean, they had at the beginning of the year, I was really positive about them putting Rede Parejas in February because that usually was a dead period in their schedule. But now that they moved King of Gate from May to July, this portion of the year from May to late June was incredibly dry because apparently they didn't have any idea what to do. So they did basically nothing until a couple of weeks before Kobe World. So that was difficult for me. Then I was thinking All Japan Pro Wrestling maybe. There was so much good stuff on top, but then there is so much dirt underneath.
There's voodoo murders.
Yes, there's Yoshitatsu. There's Atsushi Onita as All-Asia Tag Champion. So I can't really say that they are a top 3 promotion. Great was mentioned as well by the listeners, and I think since Shima has taken over the book, this promotion has been so bad. I mean, there is just...
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but...
What is this promotion now?
It's just Dragon Gate 2, pretty much. Like that's what he's turned it into at the moment. I think the thing that saves them is their champions, because you look at Tamura and Shimatani, and then I think T-Hawk has been an excellent champion this year. Even before, and Ishida as well. I thought like it was a brief run, but I thought he was like a shot in the arm that they needed. So the top of the card is great. It's just
they brought in Ishida, and they had this great match with Lindemann, or this great 2 matches with Lindemann in January, and then they took the belt of him, and he's been doing nothing ever since.
Well, and, I mean, Lindemann hasn't been doing anything either.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
I mean, the match with T-Hawk is a match of the year level match, in my opinion. Like Ishida and T-Hawk, like that was probably the best match that company's ever had. Mm-hmm. So I think that, that's the thing. Like when you look at the top of the card, they have good things happening. It's just the undercard and the undercard's not bad. I actually think their promotion, they're easy to watch, but I turn my brain off. Like I don't think about their storyline.
Nothing ever matters.
Yeah. And even the UWF stuff, it's like, they're trying to make strides with UWF and also the women's division. They started the storyline with Miyagi. Mm-hmm. So they're trying. It's just they've still got a ways to go. But I will say their shows are always super easy to watch for me.
Absolutely,
like it's just 2 hours of good wrestling. Occasionally you'll get some weird lucha guy from a business perspective that doesn't make any sense to fly him in, but whatever. And like they bring him in anyway, and it's a fine 2 hours of wrestling whenever they come on. I enjoy their shows, actually. But like you said, I can't care about any of this stuff because none of their booking makes any sense. So it's tough. I guess I would have to go with Stardom number 3 just because of business wise. They're probably you can't downplay what they accomplished with the All-Star Queendom in Yokohama. You can't downplay that. They made strides, but man, the last couple of months have been really rough. To be honest, it's been a really tough and unnecessary change, like in format for whatever reason they've had. I thought they were the best company last year, pretty clearly. Like if you look at their booking, it was flawless. If you look at how they went to the year, from the start of the year to the end of the year, like you couldn't have done it much better than they did it. And then for some reason, I don't know what happened or what changed, but like after that show, that 423 show, I feel like it's been almost all of my feelings on what they've done has been negative. And even before that, there were cracks showing. And maybe we just had faith in what they were doing because last year, the storyline of the red belt just was so great that we just hoped that they would get back with Julia, and then they switched the title, which to me is I still say I thought that was one of the worst booking decisions of any company, was to change the red belt at that show. And I mean, we see it here because all I got told was how great that was. And then you look at the best moment and all of that, and that's not getting any votes even at this point, 2 months later, for the same people that said it was this classic moment. So I think it's interesting. I hated that move. The double title thing was universally negative. Like nobody liked that. And to me, I actually thought that was not that big of a deal, just because I knew Mirai was going to win. It was either Shirakawa kept it for another month or Nakano lost. It didn't really make that big of a difference either way, other than it was stupid to not challenge for the red belt when you're facing a double champion instead of the white belt. The Cinderella tournament, I mean, that was a disaster. And you look at the
that was really bad.
Yeah, you look at the attendance. I mean, they tanked during that. I mean, it was getting bad. And there was nothing but success stories last year for them. And we've seen a lot of flaws come up the last 3. If it was the first 3 months, you had stuff to point to. Again, it wasn't all perfect, but you had stuff you could really hang your hat on. I mean, Mirai and Hashimoto, Julia and Yukihi, those matches were epic and amazing. And I thought, and look at the artist title. Man, that was another dumb move. As a fan, I actually hate that even more than the red belt change when they changed from restart. Totally cut them off for no reason. Like they had so much left to give. And DDM's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. It's cool that you have a spot for Julia now and all, but they had so much to give, and you've transitioned to this feud between Poi and Ano, and it's just so stupid. Like I mean, that didn't even happen in the half year, the strap match, but it was so bad and stupid, and they just became friends.
Know what? Probably like what is. The business side of Stardom obviously puts them in a top position here, and what also puts them in a top position is that they manage to put on these big shows that garner a lot of attention, and that's the thing that drives my vote as well, because we've been talking about that a lot recently, that I zone in from time to time and then I zone out again. So these cracks that are really not that visible for me as a part-time watcher of Stardom, but when I hear it from you, I think it's visible more for those that keep on track all the time.
And I'm sure there's fans that disagree with that are Stardom followers. Some of that, like I said, the double stuff universally negative, I would say. The red belt's controversial. I think that's more 50-50. Some people loved it. Some people thought it was the wrong move. I definitely think it was the wrong move overall. And I just think back, the thing about that was it's not just that happened. Like if they had built it better, I think it could have been actually amazing. But that was a sign that, okay, whatever happened, things have changed. Like this company is not the same as it was the last 2 years, where Utami had the big run, it led right to Shuri. Shuri had the big run, it led right to Julia. And you thought that was the main thing that like they wanted, and then they undercut it. And I still can't wrap my head around it. Like you said, though, the fans will rally behind. I mean, the cage match that happened just a couple weeks ago, I got a lot of votes on our match of the year. We'll get to that in a little bit. A lot of people bought into that story. We'll see what happens with Utami. I mean, It's just very weird that she's in GCW a week before the tournament starts. But a lot of people have a lot of feelings and speculations on that. But we'll see. And there's the thing with them is we're heading right to the 5-star Grand Prix, right?
Yeah.
This roster is so good. No matter what stupid stuff they do, they're going to make it work. They're going to deliver in the end, and it's going to be a great tournament. And all of the stuff they're going to do, even the negative stuff, like DDM, Mai Sakurai is taking great steps forward. To me, she's one of the most improved. To call back to that last award, she's got a new character now, doing great things. Julia, one of the best, obviously. Even though I disagree with the decision, they're still going to have banger matches at the end of the day. The tournament, same thing. I might not have been a fan of the flip-flop of the white belt and the red belt changing hands and all the titles in chaos and all that. But at the end of the day, you look at these wrestlers we're talking about, Julia, Tom Nakano, Mirai, Shirakawa. It's going to be good. No matter what happens, they're going to make it work. But hopefully they can get things back on track to some semblance of where they were last year, because I think they've taken a big, big step back from 1 year ago.
Yeah, and then we have to look at what else is there in Japan right now. I mean, the number 4 in the eyes of the listeners was Pro Wrestling Noah, and you can point to a lot of flaws that this promotion has.
Oh yeah.
For just the majority of that being the junior division. And what they put on, basically put on a New Japan nostalgia show for Muto's retirement, and had a big drop off after that. They're throwing stuff against the wall all the time, see what sticks. Few things actually stick. There's a lot of moving parts all the time.
Not to cut you off, but I want to ask you something. Yeah. What did you think of, because the juniors are bad. I think we have to look at Kaito as well.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of Takeda and his comments about Kaito?
What did he say?
He was saying how, because they were talking about why is he in G1 and not N1? Mm-hmm. Was the basis of this interview. And he said, well, if we had arenas full of people cheering for Kaito, he would be an N1. But they're not, so he's an G1, so we're trying to get more,
Well, maybe you should have booked him a bit better.
Maybe you shouldn't say this publicly. Is the main problem with that. But yes, we all know that they should have booked him better. Any logical person, even the most diehard Noah defender can admit that they haven't handled him right at this point. And now you say that tells you what they think about him. Sure. Like the fact that he would say that publicly, that tells you all you need to know. And I've always said it, if they tell you what they think of a guy, listen. And we've seen that for years at this point. That's why I never really got too up in arms about his title reign. When Okada beat him and how he beat him in February, that told you everything. At the end of the day, you can't come back from that automatically. I remember us having our debate on who should win the title and I just thought there's no way he could be champion after that. He can't, and he wasn't, and it was the right decision. Ultimately, I think Jake, in their defense, I think he's done a really strong job as champion. I think he's a guy that you could say was underrated. When he came in, a lot of people were laughing at him.
I was thinking about that. Yes.
Yeah, so when he came in, people were looking at him like this geek, and he's actually done a good job. I thought the Sugiura match last month was fantastic, a great match, and yet another one in a reign that continues to grow, and that's something I always really value a lot. The Kaito match, that was not good. We all know that. Nakajima was better than that. Marufuji was even better than that, and then Sugiura steps forward, and hopefully Sugiura can get well soon. But they're doing some good things with the heavyweight title. We mentioned Wagner. The tag scene is a little bit in flux right now. I don't think Thatcher and Huxley is the team you want to go with, but ultimately we know that that's just going to lead to Axis winning the tag titles. Absolutely. Ultimately, in all likelihood. So, the heavyweight stuff, they're getting there. You still can't ignore the fact that they've just botched their top young stars run so badly that they have. And the juniors is just atrocious. There's no good to be said about what's going on with the Hayata reign right now.
No.
Yeah, him versus Dante Leon was legitimately one of the worst matches of the year.
I've not seen that, and I have no desire to ever go back.
Even poor Hisame, who I love a lot, I always respect her, but if you're a fan of hers, she's probably not going to talk too bad about anything no one does too much. except that match, where even she couldn't spin this in any way that except negative at the end of the day. And it was like there was no good to be had. The tag team titles have been better since Ogawa and company have, since Yohei and Tadasuke become the champions. They're more enjoyable, but it's still only pretty good. Like nothing that you need to say, nothing you can emotionally invest in. And they're probably going to go back to Eita and some goofball. And Stinger's going to be around in all of it anyway, and it's not going to be good. So, and you look at, there's tons of guys in that promotion that you could look at. Most of them were nominated for most underrated. But there's tons of guys in the junior division that you could say they could do a lot more with, whether it's Yoshioka, Kotage, Alejandro is somebody that I really like. Makasa, even since he lost the title, they got him back up to have this match with Wagner, and it was great. We hope that they can capitalize on that going forward. I don't know if they can or not, but there's a lot of great talent in Noah. It's just the way they use them is makes it impossible.
Yeah, and even when you look at other Yoshi companies in Japan, I mean, there used to be a time when there actually was some competition for Stardom, but just isn't the case anymore. No. Not at all. I mean, Sendai Girls for a long time has probably been one of the bigger companies in competition with Stardom, but they've ran 12 shows this year. Seadring is also not running very consistently. Ice Ribbon has lost a lot of blood in the last couple of years. TJPW, except for the big shows this year, has not had a good year, to be quite honest. Then, Actress Girls. Actress Girls is certainly a promotion that I enjoy a lot. I've been getting behind some of the players in Actress Girls in the last couple of weeks, like, for example, Natsuki, for example, Shiaki, I think is very good. But this is a very tiny company. So there's no way I could ever vote for a company like this that is so tiny to be the top company in Japan. Another one that is very tiny in comparison to other men's promotions is just Big Japan Pro Wrestling. There's no way I would vote for Big Japan Pro Wrestling as the best company, because they are clearly not. From a personal perspective, I can totally understand that, and I want to give a shout out to Rob. Without looking up, I clearly know that he's one of those that voted for Big Japan Pro Wrestling, and much like you said,
as he should be, and much like you said, they've been getting more attention. They've produced some of the better matches this year as well. So I know that they have their fans that will vote for them, but from my point of view, that these three promotions on top, there was no other way to go with it, in my opinion. Yeah, I think Noah, you could formulate a case.
Yeah,
if you really wanted to. All Japan, I think, I will say this, I think they've taken, the Champion Carnival, like you said earlier, you kind of alluded to it earlier, nobody really got to stand out in that tournament. The final was a great match, but besides that, I don't think there was a lot that you could point to.
And in the end, there was this big blemish over the final with Ashino winning and injuring. Yeah.
I think they've taken steps forward, though, since then. I feared that it would be like last year.
Exactly, and that's the one hope that we have. They have had ultimately a better first half year than last year.
Exactly, because last year through Champion Carnival, the final happened. Aoyagi won. It was this epic moment, amazing match. Everyone was super hype, and then for whatever reason, things just went off the rails entirely, and things got really, really bad. And Voodoo Murders came back, and nobody wanted that. Here, they've taken steps forward. At least I still wouldn't put them above the other companies. And like I said, Stardom, the thing is their roster is so strong. All Japan's got a thin roster, but a quality one. It's just there's just not depth there compared to something like Noah should be a great company. It's just that they're run so poorly that you can't really defend that in any way. So there's ways you could formulate arguments if you wanted, but I agree, those are the top three. And to me, we're talking about all this. In reality, New Japan is the clear winner, and it was totally justified by the listeners to vote them there. And they should be, because they're much, much better than they were in years past.
And to make a case for Big Japan Pro Wrestling, Dylan, they have not Big Japaned Yuya Aoki. Usually when a young guy wins the championship, they will put him in a horrible situation where within 2 months he drops the title belt. That may still happen with him facing Yasufumi Nakanoe, But ever since Yuya Aoki was appointed the challenger to Yuji Kobayashi, this guy has been on fire and winning matches left and right. And that is how you produce a champion. He got a great first defense against Ryota Hama, great roadblock for the first defense in Kurikan Hall, which made him look good. So at least here, Big Japan is now treating one of their upcoming talents right.
Yeah, they've done a great job. Like I said, they've taken steps forward throughout the year from where they were at the start to now. Yeah. I don't think that's a bad vote, actually. Like if you take the business perspective out of it, then you can make a case for that.
I think so.
Yeah, but shout out to Mr. Wrestling 2 voting for Pure J. You give it
yes.
Because I've always been a long-time JWP super fan going way back, so I will always have love for Pure J, and we need them. What about Extreme Garbage Fighting?
I was just going to ask who voted for them.
It had to be CFOs. Like I said,
I think so.
I don't know that for sure, but it had to be him.
It has to be him, yeah.
Yeah, but I love that guy though. Like a wonderful fan of indie wrestling to this day. Even in these, like I said, it's not like the old days where you could just go on Daily Motion and find this stuff. You have to work if you want to see XGF matches. You have to really be in depth. What because we talked about all these other promotions. What about New Japan? Like, what do you think of New Japan?
Yeah, I think New Japan has improved drastically from where they were at the pandemic. And I think that they had at least 2 standout shows. I mean, not that they were quality-wise on the level of a best show of the year, but with the Sakura Genesis and with the Dominion, I think they had shows that, and also with the Best of the Super Junior, very good tournament in my opinion, one of the better tournaments that they've done in recent years. Yeah. They've produced some great moments this year, also with the return of Yota Tsuji. Sanada as champion is a leap of faith for them. They've been doing a lot of things right because they changed around their formula and have given wrestlers the ball that never really had the chance to prove themselves on any kind of level before. And I think you got to value that. They still are, of course, the biggest company when it comes to money behind them. I think they use their promotional tactics very well. And I'm really looking forward to the second half of the year because they set a lot of things in motion in the first couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything about them is the best company. Consistency-wise, they've taken good steps forward. G1's right on the horizon. You think they could do that again? I will say that, I think ideally you want them to take a step forward in business sense, but I think that they've set things like right now, this first half year was more like table setting. And we're seeing that again to bring up the Three Musketeers thing. They're trying to set stuff up for the future, pretty much. And hopefully in a year, we look at it and they make things, and things are better, like business-wise.
Yeah, we'll see about the Three Musketeer thing.
I mean, this is the first year that they will not have the biggest show of the year in Japan. Like, the Noah show was bigger than Wrestle Kingdom this year in terms of attendance. And, I mean, that's a shocking thing. Like, nobody could have predicted that. A year and a half ago, but that's how it played out, and I'm sure that they were motivated.
Yeah, but unless, I mean, who else is there that could retire? That could draw a crowd in that range?
Oh, well, obviously that was a one-off. I don't think they have to worry again, but I still do think that's something that will irritate some people. And
it will irritate them.
I know it did. I know that's what I'm talking about. Like the people in the company.
Yeah.
That irritated some people. I know for a fact it did. I know that they were worried about it, and then it happened.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I was very confident that it would happen.
Yeah.
But we're still looking at, you want things to be bigger, though. We're talking about 20,000 people in the dome. That we want to get back up to where we were before. Like we have to make steps. It's not going to happen overnight. So we have to make steps. I mean, look at Dominion. That was not a great number at the end of the day. Ultimately it was 7,000 people or whatever. And I mean, altogether again was a big disappointment numbers wise. And you have to, put that on them as the main company, more or less. You need to move forward. So hopefully they're setting things up though, to where hopefully if this all takes off, new stars can get made and the fans can rally behind them. You'll see improvements going forward. But I wanted to say something about New Japan because they were the top company and we talked about all these other ones.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just browsing around. Yes, I guess that finishes off our discussion about that. But it may conclude. We may conclude to talk about some of the companies because our next category is the show of the half year, and this is always an interesting one because I feel like no other category, this one is overshadowed by the second half of the year.
Yeah.
With a lot of shows in the second half of the year being much more important than shows in the first half of the year. So it's crucial, I think, to point out some of the shows that happened in the first half. And I want to make the start here. I always go by my spreadsheet where I don't rank matches, I rank shows. And the top 3 shows that ranked in my spreadsheet were on number 3, Big Japan Endless Survivor from May 4. I think, much like you said, they've been on a good run, and this turned some heads, this show. This was a very important show in their schedule. It had an extremely great match on top with Yu Aoki and Yuji Kobayashi. It had for the Big Japan deathmatch fans, it had a good match with Abdullah Kobayashi and Hideyoshi Kamitani in a classic Big Japan stipulation with a jungle deathmatch. It had a great tag team title match with the Astronauts against Similarity. Good junior title match, Kaji Tomato and Kota Sekifuda, and everything else that you get on the Big Japan roster was on the undercard performing like it was a strong show. So I really want to give a shout out to Big Japan for this one. They've had some good stuff in May and June, definitely. My number 2 is All-Star Grand Queendom from Stardom. We've done a review of this show, singular review, Dylan. It's rare that we even do something like that, but I enjoyed this show so much that we went right into the review of that one.
Yeah, it's great. I love doing that show.
Yeah, obviously with Tam and Julia, Mayu and Mercedes, Shuri and Shiro Hashimoto, Mina Shirakawa and Saya Kamitani. You can go on. This was so much great stuff on top there that this show deserves this top spot in my opinion. But my number 1 ranked show was actually the Keiji Muto retirement show from February 21. Mostly because I was one of those that were the highest on the singles matches that happened on the show. And of course, for Kaito, it was detrimental to his career, but the way the Okada and Kaito match was handled was so unprecedented that it blew me away. And I also was the high one, I think, on the Naito and the Muto match. And it had so many cool stuff underneath as well that I enjoyed this show so much that I put it up at my top position for show of the half year.
To me, there were 2, like that and the Stardom show were the best shows, like pretty clearly. And I'm like you, I think the Endless Survivor like needs to be mentioned as well. So just switch. I think the Stardom show I'd pick over the Muto show. I mean, it was
also
close.
Won by the listeners. Yeah.
It was close though. Like I said, Stardom and the Keiji Muto show. The Muto show was a spectacle at the Dome. Like you said, a very unprecedented show. Like I said, the biggest show of the year attendance-wise. The production values were amazing. You look at the music medley they played of all his own theme songs. The video was emotional, and the ending was amazing. Like a total feel-good moment at the end of the day. So the match quality I didn't think was the Kaito and Okada match was terrible for Kaito, but a great wrestling match at the same time. Like, execution-wise.
I mean, we had one dude just running a bulldozer over the other one.
Yeah, and it was performed spectacularly.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of the character work, and that was some of Okada's best character stuff of his whole career. And Kaito's an amazing wrestler. So, that was a great match. There's no question about that. The other stuff, I mean, I didn't like the main event personally, like Muto and Naito. I know some people did, like, Muto and Naito. That's one of those 50-50 type of matches. Some people really loved it. The other stuff was all good, like nothing wrong with the undercard, I would say. You got big moments. I thought the tag was the first we saw of Kento and Nakajima.
Yes.
The crowd really popped big for that. Yuma trolled the
Kento
crowd.
was so over.
As he always is. Same thing with Altogether. I mean, he is one of the top stars in Japan. I just look at the Noah thing. As soon as they bring him in, suddenly they're having to move more seats into. They're legit selling out Korakuen, which never happens now, just because
What did
of
Jay
him.
say? Like a legit sellout of Korakuen is now 1,400.
And they had to put in more seats. They had to move it to the old style, like close to 1,800. Now,
Crazy,
and
right?
that never would have happened if he wasn't there. Ultimately, so
He is really putting asses to seats.
legit.
Even asses to seats that aren't even there in the first place.
Yeah, they had to move more seats to put more asses into them
Yes.
overall. So Kenta, definitely star power. We'll talk about him later.
The seat mover. The ass
Uh,
mover.
Yeah, but Yuma, the trolling Muto, getting huge heat was awesome. Great moment. That was a great show. I think the Stardom show was better wrestling wise, like pretty easily. To be honest, like Nakano and Julia, I don't like the title change, but as a match, I thought it was much better than the Muto and Naito match. Shuri and Hashimoto, that was a great match. That one teased my match of the year, and that was probably my favorite match on the show. So there isn't really a match of the year candidate on that show, in my opinion, but a lot of great stuff. I mean, the artist title match was great. Restart looked phenomenal. Kyrie was amazing. Mercedes and Mayu was not a great match, but it was good for what they had it in mind. You had the white belt challenge. Himika's retirement was so emotional. That stands out. That was probably my second match on the show. I mean, look, we're talking 6, 7, 8 matches deep, and with the Muto show, we're talking like 2, maybe 3. At the end of the day, so I can't look past that to go with the Stardom show. And I mean, the production values was great. It was important. Obviously, the Muto show was much bigger business-wise attendances, but I mean, for the importance of it, I think we can't underlie that either. So they're the two that stood out, and I would say Endless Survivor as well. But we got a lot of votes for the New Japan shows, the Wrestle Kingdom and Sakura Genesis as well.
I wanna ask you one thing, Dylan.
Yeah.
In recent years, ever since her tragic death, the Hana Kimura Memorial Show always was a runaway winner of this category in our half-year awards. And it also this year has a rating of 9.35 at Cage Match, so ranking amongst the prior Memorial shows for Hana. But this year, it didn't get a lot of votes from the listeners. Why do you think that is?
The last 2 years, they were so different from each other, but like equally as emotional.
Mm-hmm.
The first year was a devastating display of sadness, like that. Was something that the thing is, those first 2 years of shows I'll never forget in my whole life. And I couldn't believe it that the one last year didn't win the show. I still, my mind can't wrap my head around it in a lot of ways, because the second year was like a triumph of mankind. I know that sounds dramatic, but
no, it was the exact opposite of the first year. It was a celebration of her life, basically.
Yeah, and to see the thing that stands out to me is that this is her mom running the show at the end of the day, and her mom wrestled on last year's show against the one that found her dead body. Like, her best friend and her mom wrestled after being out of wrestling. That was an unbelievable moment to me that I said I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it, legitimately. Like, it was so incredible. This year was like a fun get-together between all of her old friends.
Exactly.
Much. Like, the emotion wasn't the same this year as it was in the past 2.
And that's, I think, ultimately the point. I mean, it was still a fun show, and still some, as you mentioned, a good get-together. But there is ultimately limits to what you can do with that. I mean, you were very hesitant after the first one already.
I never wanted to see a show like that again, even though it's so emotional. And
then the second one was so different from the first one, and it had its right to exist. And also, these shows still have their right to exist. But I fear that in years to come, when they continue to produce these shows, that these shows might ultimately lose their organic aura, if you know what I mean. That you feel like, okay, we have to do the Hana Kimura show this year. Let's see who we can get.
And that's probably true, but that's not – it's not a bad thing if Kyoko can get through some of the intense pain that she's
that is Absolutely true. Yeah.
And that was my opinion. Even at the end of the first show, it was this unbelievable emotional display. I'll never forget that light coming on and her holding that picture of Hana in the ring. Like I said, and then, like I said, it was crazy to even think about. But I remember after that show, I said, and I'll say it here, if Kyoko Kimura wants to run a Hana Kimura memorial show every single day.
Oh, more power to her.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Like then I 1,000,000% approve. No matter, I don't care what anybody thinks. Like that's what matters most, in my opinion, is to see her and her family and her very close friends, people like Jungo Kiona, that they can have some semblance of heart from. And I think that those shows actually did a lot of good, like, for them. And I mean, I don't know that for sure. I don't want to speak out of turn or anything, but I feel like seeing that happen on last year's show, I hope at least that it did a lot of good for everybody involved, because you don't want to see these people hurt forever. These are people at the end of the day more than wrestlers, and we got to remember that overall. Like, this is her daughter that died, and she's been able to do this. And I think that the emotion naturally, I mean, time will move on. Like, if anybody died, like no matter who it was, if it was me, you, a legendary wrestler, eventually, like, I remember Misawa dying in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
And how devastating it was for the fans. And you compare the Misawa show the first year to now, and obviously it's a lot different. And that's just natural in humanity.
And I was thinking about Atsushi Aoki, and they basically stopped doing shows for him.
And that's a sad thing, because that was a really tragic death. I remember we did a show right after that. And I thought that was honestly, like, something very important to me.
For me as well, yeah.
And I know it was for you as well, absolutely.
And I know that it was for a couple of wrestlers as well that were very tied with Aoki as well.
I was very happy that we could add something good out of that terrible situation at the end of the day, and hopefully it did help a lot of his friends and a lot of the fans too. We obviously know, and like you said, unfortunately they've moved away from that. I know there's been like regime changes and stuff like that in All Japan, but I actually think these memorial shows are good. Even like I said, the first two Hana shows, that was a totally like unique, spectacular, emotional situation that cannot be repeated, and we know that, and it's a good thing in the case of the first show. But I've actually changed my opinion, because like you said, I was hesitant after the first show just because it was so devastating. Like to see, like, because if we had another show like that, then it would make it would make me feel like Kyoko is still suffering so much, and I would just, as a person, I would hate to see that. But when you see the second show, and even this show in a lot of ways, I mean, it was still, honestly, if you look at Pink's, it was still a great show on its own. Yeah, like, and just as a wrestling show, it was really good. The main event was so strong. You had all these people come in. It was a good show. So I think it's a good thing for her friends and family, and that's really where I'm at. If the friends and family want to do it, then I will support it. If not, then I totally respect it as it is. But I actually think, as a fan, I would.
Not to be misunderstood here. This was not my point. I just fear that it might lose its aura if they continue doing these. I mean, it's always a great point in time for probably, I can't get into her head, but it's probably always a great point in time for Kyoko, much like you said, to run these shows. Just hoping for the best here.
And that's exactly right. And that's the main thing to me, is whatever Kyoko wants, she should do. But I actually think that if it were up to me, I wish All Japan would still do the Aoki shows. I think he deserves to be remembered in that same way as well. He meant so much to training their talent and stuff. And like I said, I know there's been regime changes, but I think memorial shows are actually good to remember this old talent that's passed on, especially tragic losses like Aoki and Hana, Misawa, as I mentioned as well. When you have stuff like that, I think it's actually good to remember these things. When I think of Hana Kimura, obviously her death was tragic and terrible, but I also think about all the great things she had in her life as well, like, as a wrestler that she brought to the table. I think we can't forget about the good parts of these people's lives either. And I think that like these kinds of things help remember those things as well. Not just their death, but also their life is important to remember as well.
Absolutely, yes. I'm looking at some of the other listeners' votes. Is that a typo on your part, or did actually 4 people vote for Wrestle Kingdom Night 1?
No, they did. Not a typo. Okay. What, you hate Wrestle Kingdom?
I'm really not like. we're talking about January 4, right?
Yeah.
It's not like it's like day 1 or day 2 anymore with Wrestle Kingdom. I know that there is Wrestle Kingdom 17 in Yokohama Arena, but that's not really Wrestle Kingdom.
Well, that's not Wrestle Kingdom, but they called it Night 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. Yes,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sakura Genesis actually ranks above that show. I think that's due to the part of the unprecedented thing that Okada lost to Sanada. I think there was a big impact.
It was a better show, in my opinion. You look at the top 5 matches, not just Okada and Sanada, but I mean, I thought the tag match was phenomenal. The Bishamon versus Aussie Open.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you had a great match. The junior title match was really good. Hiromu, Robbie Eagles. You had the TV title with Umino and Zack was pretty good. The triple threat IWGP women's title match, we got to see Mercedes in New Japan wrestle, New Japan proper. So that's 5, again, kind of what I was saying with the Stardom show. That's 5 matches strong. And the Wrestle Kingdom, it's like, yeah, you have Ospreay and Omega, you know, and then what?
Yeah, true. Definitely. TJPW Grand Princess got some votes. All together again. You would have thought that this show got more votes when it was announced, but then again, it was a good show.
I thought that was such a disappointing effort all around. I mean, the main event was great, but I was so hyped for that when that got announced. And I remember somebody commented on our YouTube, again, to bring up the YouTube comments. They were like, because me and Dean did a show covering all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
shout out to Dean, by the way. A great show that he did with you on All Together.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some stuff, too. Some Noah pick'ems for N1, trying to set some stuff together. We're going to do some more stuff in the near future about Noah. So big shout out to Dean, who did vote on these awards, too.
Yes.
But I was so hyped for that show. And one of our comments we got on that YouTube page was, man, in the past, these 3 companies working together could have sold out the Dome at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, then you get this, which is like, they didn't put this show on to do less than Dominion. I promise you. At the end of the day, like, there's no way that this wasn't a huge disappointment at the end of the day. And a startling reality check, if you, to bring back Open the Voice Gate again, Jay was on there in his interview, and it was a firm reality check to where wrestling is in Japan, not just Dragon Gate right now. And that was the reality check for me. It was like, okay, we're still in not a great spot, regardless of. And I think ultimately it proves that the pandemic restrictions, not to say that they were never there, but I'd say for the last year plus, what that really was just excuses made to not draw many fans. And we knew that when the fight sold out the Dome for real with 55,000 fans. But I think a lot of people clung to that and made it seem bigger than it really was, when reality was the fans just aren't there like they used to be. And for whatever reason, I mean, you look at New Japan, their pandemic run was awful. Like, there's no question.
Oh, man.
And they drove off a lot of fans. Like, there's no doubt about that. And I think that they need some time to, and kind of what we were talking about best promotion, that All Together Again show proved that they need some time to regroup and get more fans back.
And I mean, you mentioned Jay, and one of Jay's core points when he talks about Dragon Gate fans is always, we probably are not getting those fans back. We need to make new ones.
And he's right in some ways. I think it's possible. Like, you could win some fans back with certain things, but I think in general, though, once you lose, there's always a saying, you can't put lightning back in a bottle. If that passion is gone, it's really hard to get back.
Wrestling is such a unique passion that there are a lot of fans. I mean, I talked to one of the former office members of WXW a couple of months ago, and he said not a lot of people remain wrestling fans throughout their whole lives. There's just a core of hardcore fans that will just always be there and always go to the shows, and that's great. But a lot of them, they will drop off once, they get married, they get children, whatever happens in their lives, they get a new job. Things are more important at one point than wrestling, and that is where you have to get your eyeballs on when you're a wrestling promotion. And that's why at the beginning of the show I said that new wrestling fans' opinions are so important for wrestling companies that they need to focus their product on getting new fans and new attention to them. And we've seen that some wrestlers like Kano and now Yuma Oyagi as well have opened up YouTube channels. So you need to find new ways to attract customers. And we're still very far away from where Japanese wrestling used to be even before the pandemic. But that to be said, shining light here was the number that Dragon Gate did for their Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival. That's, of course, on July 1st, so after the cutoff, with over 5,000 fans, back to where they were before the pandemic for Kobe World.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge success. You got to give Hiromu credit for that. And I said Ultimo putting his mask on the line was a big draw as well. And the cage match, spectacular stuff. So, yeah, great news for them to do that. That, like you said, there's hope in the future. When we're heading into tournaments, we'll have to see how that plays out. But there's a chance, getting into the finals of these shows, I think it'll be – you have the opportunity to take steps forward using the moves that you've set up at the first half of the year that maybe wasn't spectacular business-wise, but you set things up to maybe in 6 months' time at Wrestle Kingdom next year, you have a great attendance, and it feels like they're back for real.
Yes. Well, we're transitioning now from show of the half year to the best bout, the match of the half year. And when I am looking at the listeners' votes, there is a runaway winner with Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. Then we got Yuya Oki versus Yuji Okabayashi from Big Japan, Endless Survivor, and the Queen's Quest versus Oedo Tai loser leaves unit cage match on number 3. Dylan, what's your top 3?
This was, to me, the hardest award to vote on because I think there's a lot of really strong matches overall. A lot of them were easy. I mean, this was a blowout for the fans, and Omega and Ospreay is in my top 3 for sure. I think it's
my number 1. Yeah.
I think it's my number 1 too. It feels like the boring choice, but it also feels like the right one.
I mean, just think back to when we reviewed the show. We had so much to say about this match, and we were so blown away by all of this mega spectacle that these two put on. And it was in the Tokyo Dome. It was the biggest show of the year, and these two were just damned. They were damn sure to just put on this great performance, and they just did. So, for me, this was easy. Everything else on this list wasn't easy.
Yeah, and the winner's the most important thing, obviously. Like the rest is kind of just like superfluous at that point. But to me, I mean, I had a bunch up there. Like this wasn't easy for me, but it feels like the right choice. The more the more we talk about it. I think earlier I kind of got you on board with Kanda. I think the thing is, I thought the Aoki and Okabayashi match, like that, was something very special and like a great match that everyone deserves a lot of credit for.
Totally agree with you. I've got that on my number 3.
What's your number 2?
Shingo Takagi versus Hinari in the Ultimate Triad match.
I love that match so much. What a great pick that was.
Yes. That was such a spectacle. These two tanks just running into each other for over 30. Was it for over 40 minutes?
Yeah,
close to 40.
Yeah, I think it was like 38 or something.
This is the greatest stipulation that New Japan has ever thought of.
Yes.
And they need to be very cautious to not run it to death, and to really be cautious to only give it to wrestlers who really are able to perform on the level of what Shingo Takagi and Hinari put on there.
And, I mean, there was a fear that they might, because they did it again that same month, the Ultimate Triad match with him and Taichi, and it was not as good as the Hinari match. And it was still good, but not as good as, like, that Hinari match, totally on board with this pick. It didn't get any votes, but it should have, because that match freaking ruled. I love the Ultimate Triad stipulation, like you said, the best they'd ever come up with. That's a great pick. That's the one that kind of slipped my mind, but when you brought it up, like, that deserves some recognition. Great job on your part. For me, I said this after it happened. I know that I'm on an island with this. I know that no one will agree with what I'm about to say. But I said it after the match, and I still feel that, like, it's another thing, like, every time I think about this match pops into my head above some others that maybe I probably, most people would rate higher. But I thought that Anzai and Nagata match was so perfect for what they needed to do. Like, it was a match where even the flaws made it more beautiful. You know, like when he messed up the moonsault, that was perfect for the situation, like this very specific situation at hand. Like if anybody else had done it, it would be awful and suck. But because it happened with Anzai at this moment, a guy that does nothing, but he needs something, so he does something that he's not comfortable with, was perfect for me. And I love that match so much. And that's what I said at the time, that you'll remember it at the end of the year, and I still feel that way. To me, I'll shout out. Actually, we talked about the All-Star Queendom show. I liked the Shuri Hashimoto match, but I thought the Mirai and Hashimoto match from February was better, actually, because you had the Shuri and Hashimoto match was like a straight up, match, pretty much like a great match. Don't get me wrong, it was a fight and all of that. Mirai and Hashimoto was like perfect underdog babyface versus monster heel energy. It was a very, fast-paced match. Everything worked. Everything was smart. Everything was executed so brilliantly. I loved that match, and that to me is a match of the year level match. I think I mentioned Ishida and T-Hawk before. I thought that was a great match from Glate. Like one of the best matches of their history. Bishamon versus Tanahashi and Okada, I thought was a really standout match. Yes. Great ending to that, but I think at the end of the day, I think I'm going to side with you. The way you said it really convinced me. I'll go with Omega and Ospreay as well. But I think all of those matches, like I said, there's a lot of great matches this year. Like there's no wrong answer of a lot of different things. I
want to shine a bit light on some matches that ultimately didn't make the cut for my top three. That first is Keno and Shuji Kondo versus Susumu Mochizuki and Yasushi Kanda for the Open the Twin Gate title from June 2nd. Incredible main event in Korakuen Hall. We mentioned Kanda performing on a high level. Great moment for him, pinning Shuji Kondo to win back the championship for Dragon Gate. The Altogether main event had so many details and inbuilt storylines between the six in the match that it came away for me like a very good match, but not match of the year level match, which is why I have it here. Strong BJ versus the Violent Giants on June 17 was tremendous for All Japan Pro Wrestling. That was. Same it goes for Strong BJ versus the Astronauts on May 28. Let's see, more Big Japan. Lindemann is not in Big Japan. Kota Sekifuda versus Fuminori Abe for the junior title. Big Japan on February 12th.
Yeah.
Julia versus Tam Nakano, obviously, All-Star Grand Queendom. Hiromu Takahashi versus Mike Bailey from the first day of the Best of the Super Junior. Incredible performance by both wrestlers. Chris Brooks versus Katsusada Higuchi on the DDT King of DDT final. And Master Wato versus Titan was very good as well. So there was very good wrestling to choose from this year.
Yeah, Wato Titan has to be up there, in my opinion, as well. Like a great moment for everybody. Who would have guessed that would be the final?
Yeah.
That's sort of it.
So we picked wrestlers for our team, for our fantasy draft, who we thought might get there. And in the end, it was Wato. Yeah.
Wato rules.
Yes. Well, Dylan, this was kind of a holding pattern before we go to the bigger awards here. So, the Kawada Taue Best Tag Team Award. I want to go first.
Absolutely. The closest award among the voters. So we're at a direct tie. So we are going to be able to once to break this, perhaps, depending on how it goes.
Let me just take a look at that. Yeah, I guess I can be the tiebreaker, I guess.
Okay.
So it was hard for me. Ultimately, I decided against Shunma Katsumata and Mao because of Shunma's injury and their run that got cut short, unfortunately, there. So I have them in my honorable mentions. I have also Bishamon in my honorable mentions, a quality tag team that you can make nothing wrong whenever you choose them. My number 3 tag team of the year, I mentioned them in Bout of the Year, honorable mentions, Susumu Mochizuki and Yasushi Kanda, Open the Twin Gate champions, winner of the Rey de Parejas. I remember us talking about them when they came into this tournament in February, and we were thinking, That's the old guy tag team. They'll probably end up with like 2 or 4 points, and that's good and fine. And in the end, they won the tournament. They went on to win the championship. Kanda is on the run of his life. Suzumu is as good as he has ever been. Great tag team. Love them. The original tag team in Dragon Gate.
Yeah.
Number 2. My tag team, second best tag team of the year, Strong BJ. Daisuke Sekimoto and Yuji Kobayashi. Ever since Kobayashi announced his retirement, or his hiatus, whatever it is, they've been on fire, but they've also been on fire before and have had this great series of matches with the astronauts. And then whenever they branch outside of Big Japan, they are still tremendous. So that's why I have them on number 2. And on number 1, breaking the tiebreaker from the listeners, we got Fuminori Abe, Takuya Nomura, the astronauts. What can you say about these two? Whenever they have a match, I watch it, whether it's in the mid-card, whether it's the main event, whether it's the first match of the show, doesn't matter. These two are always on point with everything that they do, with every little detail that they can come up with. Recently watched a match where I think it was Abe and Nomura against Kato, and it was not Suzuki, I think, and they came away just winning because Abe did the "I'll be back" and then just rolled Kato up, and they were celebrating. And they always do stuff like that. They always have inbuilt storylines with a lot of people, and it sets them apart from many, many other tag teams, in my opinion, in Japan.
And now I will return it to a tie.
No!
No, I'm just kidding. I went with astronauts too, actually, on there. I agree with everything you said. Just excellent workers, both of them. Everybody knows this. But they have such a great, obviously Abe is super charismatic and Nomura is more low key, but they just work together. Everything about them stylistically just makes them great. I can't imagine a better tag team. And the problem with them is, and why I would pick them, I think the listeners got it exactly right. This is exactly how I would have my top 3: astronauts, Bishamon, and Shunmao. Astronauts, to me, the quantity is just too much because they're all over the place. You look at the number of matches together, it's just more than all these other teams. And I think you can't discount that fact that they've wrestled so much together. They're a natural team, and we're the MVPs of the Fantasy Challenge.
They might actually be brothers.
They might as well be there. But let's not forget they gave me all those points in the Fantasy Challenge as well.
That is absolutely
together. So that automatically gives them a bump with the Mirai Respectors dominating right now. Although I did take some losses. All my people lost unexpectedly, like Julia Atsuki Aoyagi recently in a move that didn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever. I don't control these things, but that's okay. They're trying to make it more competitive. But astronauts, though, I think Bishamon deserves credit for having a great year. I wish that they hadn't have lost the titles to two guys that were going to leave right after, unfortunately. But they still have made the best that they could of it. And the match with Tanahashi and Okada was great. And they are another one. They feel like a legit tag team, a brother type of vibe with them. Yeah. So I think they're great. Shunmao,
the difference though with before you go on with Shunmao, yeah. The difference between the astronauts and Bishamon is Nomura and Abe feel like they are brothers of very similar age, where Hiroki Goto clearly is the bigger brother to Yoshihashi.
Great point. That's true. And I would go with astronauts. And Shunmao, I just think DDT struggled so much that they've, in a lot of ways, carried the company. They've been the positive moments on a lot of their shows. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. So I think the votes worked out pretty well. This was a pretty well, a lot of teams got some representation here, well thought out awards, but I like how close it was. I think they both deserve it, but I'm with you, Strigg. I would go with the astronauts as my winning team.
Yeah. Thing is, I think Keno would have gotten more votes if his 2 tag team runs would have been with the same partner.
Good point there. That's an excellent point. Yeah. I guess they could have done that. They should have had Soya and DG.
Can you imagine Mana with Soya and Dragon?
Yeah, if they had done that, then I think they would have won. I think you're totally right on that.
Yeah. Well, we also have Catch-22. Kenta Miyahara and Yuma Aoyagi got votes. Daiki Inaba and Masaki Tamiya, sadly not a team anymore.
Oh, so stupid that they broke them up.
Yeah.
Par for the course.
Meltier got votes. Yuki Yoshioka and Madoka Kikuta. Aussie Open, sadly. Aussie Open could have been a runaway winner.
Yeah, if they had stayed and the injury and stuff. I mean, it felt like even then they were kind of focusing more on Fletcher and a lot of these that they probably had some plans for him. But I mean, it's not to be. They had the one great match versus Bishamon. That's, to me, their run wasn't as great. I think people just look at the name and just automatically give them extra points other than the stuff they actually did. I remember going into that New Japan Cup, their storyline was nobody wanted to book them. And it's not storyline, it was real. So they got the win, and then they left. So, to me, what did their year do that was so great outside of that one match?
Yeah, well, that's why I said that they could have ranked much higher if their run had continued.
Yeah, if they were better, they could have ranked much higher. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I think we broke the tie for the listeners. Let's see. There's not really any other team that I think we need to go out of our way to talk about. I mean, okay, yeah, Axis. I mean, they've only gotten back together in May or something like that.
There's a couple of votes here that were like that. I mean, I don't think we mentioned it, but just by appearing, I mean, he did appear actually like a couple of days ago, but just by being announced, Eddie Kingston was worth the vote for somebody for best foreigner just by being on the video.
Okay.
So Axis at least had a match, so I think they qualify.
Yeah, they do. All right, Dylan, let's continue on here with the Yushin Thunder Liger Junior Heavyweight MVP. Is it? Didn't you say it was the best junior heavyweight?
Well, I'm just going by what the awards say.
Okay.
By what the Google form said.
Yeah, I guess the listeners voted for MVP and we voted for the best junior heavyweight. Okay.
Well, it says junior heavyweight on the forum, so I'm just going by the forums, Drake. You wrote it. Don't blame me for this now.
But I didn't put in MVP.
You did.
Did I?
Yes.
No.
You did. What are you talking about?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, what are you talking about, my friend?
I didn't need to, actually.
Well, so too late now, I guess.
Too late now? I actually didn't see that when I put out the form. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't put,
you could have corrected me.
I could have done that. That's fair. Yeah. But I mean, it's fine. The junior MVP is fine.
I mean, the listeners pretty much voted for very good juniors, so it's not like it's anything completely out of this world.
Well, I mean, same with the tag teams. I mean, even so, we were just talking about Aussie Open a second ago. I mean, they're, like you said, their argument against them is not as a quality. It's more that they didn't have enough matches.
Right.
At the end of the day. And now junior, you have to have that quantity of matches, I guess. It would be more of a difference here. But, I mean, like you said, all of these are pretty good, actually.
Yeah, true. So, Dylan, yours.
For a junior heavyweight, I think there's a lot of great things, but I went with the listeners. I went with Hiromu, actually. Actually, my second was the same as listeners, too, Aoyagi. And my third was somebody who didn't get any votes. As always, the original Sekafuda respectors on this show. I think he really helped make the junior division good, even in a tough time period. He was like the definition of an MVP type of candidate for a junior division, and a good worker too. I thought he was really underrated by some people for a while. Like, people were kind of dogging him, but I think
the underrated portion I think stopped last year when you go to your argumentation that you had for some of the others in last year's run. But
he's got more respect. Yeah, more respect this year. And Aoyagi, just a fantastic junior heavyweight for the juniors, and All Japan, kind of their main guy. Even though, like I said, I kind of think Hayato might be a little bit better right now, just as an all-around performer, but Aoyagi's great in his own. I really love his team with his brother, actually. I wish that they would kind of do more with that. I mean, no offense to the UN tag titles, which is very important at the end of the day. But I like those Tenryu Project shows. Honestly, I think they're kind of an underrated promotion as a whole. But Atsuki, great wrestler, great high flyer, good look, good charisma, all that stuff. Hiromu is just a special talent. And you look at his resume of matches,
I just did that, by the way, and I need to make a last-minute change, and I need to go back from what I said off the air. So, continue.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was totally dogging Hiromu off the air, saying he sucked. Nah,
That's
he didn't
not
say that.
true.
No, he did. He did.
Fake news.
Yeah, fake news right now. But no, I went with Hiromu. I just think, like I said, with his resume of matches, it's going to be hard to compare with anybody. So yeah, I think Hiromu. A lot of people mentioned too for a moment. We are going to get into. So somebody mentioned that mentioned his junior All-Star Festival. I think that really shows you how he kind of is the wavelength. He wasn't even MVP of that show, actually, if you just got to go by MVP just because he was in the opener. But still, he's really a great guy all around and just had a great, fantastic year in terms of wrestling.
Yep. I have nothing against that, actually, yeah. My thinking of that is I thought of Shunma Katsumata's great run. Once again, much like the tag team, got cut short. Sadly, could have been a top 3 junior heavyweight, to be quite honest.
And right when he won the singles title, too, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
An extreme title.
Atsuki Aoyagi, I think he deserves some recognition, and you mentioned him, too, in your top 3. I just think that I didn't understand how the second run then got to be about and then got cut short. So after his first defense already.
That was a baffling decision.
And I looked at some of the matches that he had. I mean, they were good, but not to the level that I would really say that they rank above the best.
I think that the Hayato and Doi match was better than any of both of Atsuki's matches with Doi.
Hayato and Doi, yes, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. My number 3 then it just dropped from number 2 because I looked at the matches that these two had. It's just one of my sentimental favorites all the time. That's why I always have them on top. And I really liked his run in the Best of the Super Junior. It's El Desperado. Great matches. One of the top matches, in my opinion, with Robbie Eagles in the tournament. The match with Titan was tremendous as well. Match with Francesco Akira put Akira on a completely different level. A great match
a great match.
Yeah, great match with Yo as well. But outside the tournament, he didn't really do a lot this year. Branched out to do some other stuff, definitely. Recently had this final death match with John Moxley that I still need to watch. Great tag team with Jun Kasai, of course. He's always a great, great guy to rely on when whatever you need from him. So El Desperado, my number 2. And
I just want to say one thing before you move
forward.
My
number 3, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the MVP status of this because it's good for overall, but bad for New Japan juniors because just what you said, it's kind of like the story of the junior heavyweights in these big companies. If you're not in the tournament or the champion, you're on the bench. If Hiromu was not the champion, he wouldn't have any of these great matches. What to get into? He would have been where Desperado is, doing outside stuff or in undercard tags all year. And that's the thing. There's nothing against Desperado's wrestling. Just like we said, the Aussie Open and these other people, their wrestling is great. It's just he hasn't had the opportunities because of how they use the juniors, unfortunately, in Japan with the bigger companies. Yeah.
So number 2, Hiromu Takahashi, obviously, often due to the reasons that you mentioned. And since I in my voting, I have the Jushin Thunder Liger best junior heavyweight here. My obvious answer was Fuminori Abe, the much quoted Swiss Army knife of Japanese pro wrestling. You can put him in any kind of situation, and he will shine. He will excel wherever you put him on. He was on the All-Star Junior Festival, also in the opening match. I mentioned the match with Kotosaki Fuda in February. I mentioned the strong BJ match. Whatever you do with him, the guy is tremendous. He's one of the top wrestlers in Japan.
The thing is, I think either way, MVP or best wrestler, he has a great case.
Yeah.
Except for this fact. This is why I didn't vote for him. Because to me, here... The thing is, it's not wrong saying he's a junior. When Kakuta got votes, I said he's not a junior.
He's not a junior.
Yeah, exactly. He is, but it feels wrong to vote for him in a junior category. In my opinion, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with voting for him at all because he's a great wrestler and he's a junior. He's even booked as a junior at other places. But when you look at a lot of his greatest moments, it's in the heavyweight division. Against strong BJ, his style is more of a heavyweight. And that's kind of how I looked at him. It felt wrong to me to vote for him, even though it's not really. Like, I'm not casting shade on anybody or you for voting for him. But for me, it felt wrong. But if you were to take that part out of it, I think he was the, because I think it's almost like cheating, because he gets to have all these great matches with these heavyweights that are, that is a lot of his resume ultimately. And that's my feeling on it. I don't know how I know you voted for him anyway, but still.
Yeah, that's true. In the promotion that he's wrestling the most for, he definitely is part of the junior division, and then he is also not. That makes it so difficult for him, that he's hard to grasp, and that's what makes him so unique and so special. And that's I also have him in my pound for pound best wrestler on number 2 in the Hiroshi Tanahashi Trophy.
Yeah.
So he's just so good. The last and only time he wrestled for the heavyweight title in Big Japan was in 2021, and since then he's basically been a tag guy and in the junior division. In 01 he wrestled in the Fire Festival, but it's not really like that's a heavyweight tournament or even a heavyweights men's tournament anymore, because Unagi Sayaka is in there as well too. So that's also much of a freestyle tournament.
No rules apply to 01.
Exactly. And he, for the most time, he wrestles in companies that focus on junior heavyweights, like Basara, like Michinoku Pro recently, with his great match, by the way, Fujita Hayato Jr. and Masaki Mochizuki against Fuminori Abe and Hikuto Hidaka. Great stuff.
Oh, amazing match.
So yeah,
that was match of the year match. If that had aired sooner, I think that would have gotten a lot of votes. And that's another one that's going to be on my year-end list. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
No, but I completely get why you were hesitant on choosing him.
But I don't blame anybody who votes for him, because he is a junior. At the end of the day, he just wrestles in the heavyweight division a lot.
Yeah.
He's, like you said, he's this weird anomaly at the end of the day. Because there's some guys that I say, okay, so-and-so's not a junior, like I said with Kakuta. And I don't think Yoshioka should count as a junior either, because we're seeing him booked as a heavyweight in Noah.
Yeah.
But Abe's a little different. He's different than those guys. But he's not a true junior or a true heavyweight. So I have no problem voting for him. But just for me, I felt a little guilty, and that's why I moved.
Yes. So, the listeners, Takashi, Hiro Takashi, the runaway winner, Atsuki Aoyagi, number 2, and El Desperado, number 3, whereas Abe and Master Wato on a shared 4th place. Yeah, we got Dylan. We got the best wrestler, the Hiroshi Tanahashi Trophy.
Wait, one more thing I got to say. What do you think of the people who voted for Azumi? Where do we fall on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, on the air production meeting, because I didn't know how to classify that, so I counted it, but I want to run it by you for future iterations.
She's not wrestling in a company where they have a junior division.
I think in their minds, like the people who voted for him, I don't want to speak for anybody, but they kind of count the high speed as like their version.
Yeah.
But it's not really, but I get where, like, stylistically it is. Like,
stylistically, she deserves to be in the conversation of the junior heavyweight. And I mean, we don't make any rules. Like we don't make any rules for whatever gender there is in the MVP and stuff like that. And why should we hear? Yeah, I get that. I mean, for example, like Sendai Girls, they do have a junior title, and there I could buy it even more in comparison to this one. Mm-hmm. But I certainly get the high speed argument.
That's just something I thought of right there. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's a fact.
Maybe the ones that voted for Azumi are listening and could explain their method of thinking.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I mean, she is small. I will say she's smaller than a lot of the roster. If they did have a weight division in Stardom, I think she would be in the light heavyweight side. But like you said, I just wanted to run it by you because I didn't really know, because I was kind of conflicted. Like you said, we don't really have any rules against.
I mean, then again, we also talked about Shunma Katsumoto, and it's not like DDT has a junior division either.
That's a good point as well. And that's the hard thing about DG and DDT guys, because we kind of have to wait for them to be booked in other companies before we know who's a junior and who's not. Pretty much, because Yoshioka could easily be a junior size wise, but they're
Masaki Mochizuki as well, and he's been booked in Noah as heavyweight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even Keno is a junior. Nakajima,
technically.
Yeah, Nakajima's a junior. He's lighter than like a bunch of people. Zack Sabre in Japan. You could look at all kinds of different people. The weight classes are so weird now that it's not as official as it once was. So we have to dive a little deeper and work a little harder to know. But if you're cool with Azumi,
yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool with that right now. It's fine. We'll see what we get at the end of the year here, and you might have to change the award around a bit depending on what we get. But for now, I think that's the Azumi argument stands.
Okay.
Wasn't it a great time in our lives, Dylan, when New Japan pretended that Shingo Takagi was a junior heavyweight?
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, there's other guys in other cases. I mean, look at Tadasuke and Noah. He's bigger than most of the heavyweights. Kotage was a heavyweight and then transitioned back to junior. You have guys like that too that are heavyweights in the junior division as well. So it really depends on how they book you more than your actual.
Now that you brought up Dragon, well, technically they do have a junior division with the Open the Bravegate title.
That's true. There's a weight class for that. Yeah. You're totally right.
Yeah. So Jason Lee would count in this.
Yeah, Jason would count. Then Yoshioka's definitely banned from this because he's a dream
clearly
gate.
above the Brave Gate.
Yeah, because that's how we're gonna call this. Like, if you have a secondary title that is about speed, then I guess that unofficially makes you a junior now.
Okay, now onto the Hiroshi Tanahashi Trophy.
Tanahashi Trophy. What a great name for the
totally deserving.
Yes, and I thought this is where we're gonna get into some controversy with these bigger awards, because I thought the way that it played out was very interesting. Overall for wrestler, MVP, and all of that. And best wrestler, as we stated out, I tried to make this clear on Twitter too. This is the first time we really did this, where we made a specific post about trying to explain.
Shout out to you, because you've been doing great work on the Twitter machine, which I think has resulted in us getting so many votes.
Thank you, and hopefully it did help some. As well, so thank you to everybody who appreciated that and checked out. And a lot of people replied and liked and retweeted. We got like thousands of views for the awards and everything. So that's so cool when you think about it. But I tried to explain that wrestler Tanahashi Trophy is more for in-ring only, not business or character or any of that stuff. So we look at the list here, and a lot of people got represented. You had Okada get the win here, triumph in the best in-ring performer category here for representing his rival, his eternal rival Tanahashi, the first ever winner of the half-year Tanahashi Trophy. Here, what a great! It totally fits his heel character as well now to do that. If we could get a real trophy made, I would send it to him for sure. Kento Miyahara was number 2 here, very close vote. Keno third, and then a little bit of a drop off to your Zack Sabres, and then Hiromu and Okabayashi were tied for 5th. So what were your picks here for the best in-ring wrestler? Tanahashi Trophy.
Yes. So I had some that I had on my honorable mentions. That is, first, I haven't watched as much as I wanted to, but the beginning of the year I thought was very strong for Mitsuki Watase. He performed on a very high level as the Spirit of Ganbare champion, and has tragically now lost the title to Isami Kodaka. I was so dumbfounded by that, because in the young history of this championship, this is now the 3rd time that they are going to an outsider, and it makes no sense in my opinion.
And he's another guy that's really grown over the years.
Yeah.
He's I really like, they didn't really get any mentions, but I think overall, quality-wise, GonPro has been one of the better top-to-bottom companies just in terms of in-ring work. Like, their shows are always so enjoyable to me. I think they're, like, a lot better than DDT, actually, like up and down.
Yes.
And he's a big part of that, Watase.
Yeah, he was. Totally. Then I got Mitsuki from Tokyo Yoshi Pro Wrestling. I mentioned that TGPW didn't have a great year, but whenever it came to high-level performances, Mitsuki was there. So that made me consider her for the trophy. And then there's Katsusada Higuchi. And Higuchi is someone, he had this tremendous match with Chris Brooks. And you can put him into these situations much like Fuminori Abe. It's why Fuminori Abe, by the way, is my number 2 here.
Okay.
Higuchi is just a tremendous performer. He's not on the level that he was last year anymore, with his run that sadly didn't turn the company around like they wanted it to. But you can never discount his performances. He's always great. So then on my number 3, I think some people voted for Katsushika Okada even as most improved. And
Yes.
I can see that because, I mean, the performances that he put on this year, I mean, we've said it a couple of weeks ago, he's now on the fuck them kids run of his life. And he's just having the most fun I think he's ever had in wrestling. And I can totally get behind him having these kind of matches. So Katsushika Okada, number 3 for me.
I just want to say, I love that vote because I just love it. But I will say, much like the others, I think his improvement came like last year.
Yeah, last year. That's true.
To where, I mean, remember that G1 run he had? He was stuck in the big guy division. I thought he really carried it so strongly. Had great matches with Jonah. Getting the best out of everybody. Him and Tama Tonga was Tama's best ever match that they had too. Like, this guy is just on a great run right now. Great pick on your part to be in the top 3.
So then I thought of what one of my favorite matches of the year was, and when we just put this down to who was wrestling great in 2023, not necessarily like been a champion or been on top of the promotion, but who was just a great wrestler, then for me it came down to Shingo Takagi. Shingo necessarily not had many singles matches, but these singles matches that he had, they were memorable in my opinion. For example, like look back to Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome, the match with Katsuhiko Nakajima. Tremendous match, 8.58 on Cage Match. I thought it was even better.
Best match on the show for sure, in my opinion.
The heavyweight title match against Okada at New Beginning in Osaka was out of this world great. 9.36 on Cage Match. He had a very good match with Yuma Anzai, even in Anzai's young career. It's only rated 6.5, but I really enjoyed this match because it was really like the big master showing it to the youngster, and just great stuff. I mentioned the Ultimate Triad match with Hinare. He had a match with Hinare a couple of weeks before that also was very good. Mm-hmm. And whenever you look at Shingo Takagi in these multi-man matches, he always gives 100%. And that is something that I can't discount and that I will not discount. This guy is just a tremendous performer. Even how old is he? I think he's 40 now.
Yep.
Just look at how strong he still performs, like being 40 years old. And this doesn't count, but he had one of the greatest comedy matches of any year with Konomama Ichikawa and Punch Tominaga.
Yes, that was very funny.
Yeah.
Like that was hilarious. Great points. Like, he's somebody that I didn't really think that much about, but when you lay it all out there like that, he has a great case, honestly. Like, if you look at his skill set, he's among the top tier players in all of Japan, and he continues to do it. And I think heading into G1, he's only going to have a chance to get him back up there at the end of the year awards, where everybody gives him even more love than he got here.
And even you said it, the match with Taichi wasn't as good as the Hinare match, but it still was damn great.
Yeah, it was still like a really strong match. Just not as great as the Hinare match, which was freaking incredible. So yeah, great pick. Is he your number 1?
Yes.
Okay, good pick on there. For me, there was a couple of people that I had in mind for this. I think there's been a lot of great performers this year, and we went over a few of them with yours. I think all of those are good picks on your part as well. I think that, to me, somebody I'll point out is Chihiro Hashimoto in the Joshi scene. I mentioned it before. Her match with Mirai was a match of the year level match to me. The match with Shuri, a lot of people really loved, and that to me is still the best match on that show. Everything she does on all these other promotions, whenever she pops up, kind of like what you said about Shingo, she's always doing her best at her particular style. And I think with Shingo, it's more prevalent. In the Joshi scene, her style is much more rare. So I think that allows her to stand out more. I think she's somebody I had in mind. I think Kento, he's a guy, if you look at it, again, as always, if I grade his skill set, there's things about him that irk me a little bit almost every time. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of say, he's not that great. He's overrated. Like, this has been happening for years now. And then at the end of the year, he's got 25, like 4-star, 5-star matches or whatever.
I think he has a great case as well, not only in the singles but also in the tag team with Aoyagi.
And the great match he had with Takuya at the start of the year versus Aoyagi.
Oh, yeah.
Was a great match. Like that got a bunch of match of the year votes actually for that tag. So he's a guy, like you said, tag, singles, trios. We talked about the all together main event. He's just the dude. You know, at the end of the day, whenever he comes into these foreign companies or outsider as a company, he gets a huge reaction. Everyone loves him. He just has something special about him that you just can't teach, that not a lot of other people have. So he's up there for me. But my winner was the guy we talked about in the last award that I couldn't vote for, so I voted for him here. Fuminori Abe to me. Much like I said, you can't fight his quantity at the end of the day. Like, that's the thing he'll have over everybody. No matter where he's at, what position he's in, heavyweight, junior, title, tag team, whatever. He is great in all of his matches. I love his character and his style. His charisma was so great. I think he's just a special, special talent to the fact that he can wrestle in all of these different scenarios and absolutely make them special in its own way, and he's special in his own way in them. So to me, I had to go with Abe as my number one.
Not only a tremendous wrestler, but also a tremendous person just to talk to. I mean, he came into WXW probably like 10% of the audience, if 10%, knew who he was, and he's now one of the most favorite foreigners that ever come to WXW.
Absolutely, and deservedly so. Even Yannick, the Dramatic Dream Dragon, said he talked to him and really loved their interaction together. Yeah. I've talked to him over Twitter a couple of times, and he's a very nice person as well.
Yes.
So big Abe. I don't know why we keep bringing up Aussie Open, but I will say that Fletcher.
You bring up all the Open all the time.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I think if Fletcher had a run after the tournament and the tag team, if they had been able to complete their run, he would have been a guy, because people already started to rally behind him. I think he would have gotten some big votes there. And even me, like I said, I was kind of a doubter on Aussie Open for a while, but I think that he them as a tag team in the tournament last year did good stuff. Obviously, the match with Bishamon was great, but I think that run for him specifically, I think he would have gotten some more votes if they had been able to complete their run.
So the listeners settled with Okada over Kento Miyahara, and on number 3, Keno. And I think that's 3 complete, formidable choices you can get behind. You can find cases for all 3 men in these places, so good votes.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with those at all.
Yep. Before we go to the 2 MVP awards, we got the best moment, Dylan. What do you have?
Now, this is a really interesting topic that we had here. Like, so many great things that were brought up here, and I loved them. Some of them were more like grand scheme things, and then others were like more minute things. Like a lot of people mentioned Muto's thing at the end with Shono, but then somebody said specifically him using Hashimoto and Shono's moves, which was a great moment in and of itself that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Or like Yuma's big elbow drop at All Together again got a vote. For me, though, my favorite was the Muto and Shono closing deal of the show, their match / angle that they had. If you even want to call it a match, is kind of silly to say, but I thought that was just such a perfect way to end that show. Heartwarming moment, feel good thing, and it was something that was real life. You call back to the history involved in that. I thought everything about it was basically perfect. My 2 runner-ups I'll mention real quickly. Bishamon closing the anniversary show was such a cool thing to me. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
The long-time underdogs closing the anniversary show over Okada and Tanahashi. That felt really special to me. And also Brooks winning the King of DDT. That was like an amazing moment. The match was great too, but him winning was like, again, that's like a real life achievement that a guy came from the British scene and made his way and found himself in DDT and got this huge win. And you see guys like that. And I think those are my 2 runner-ups. But to me, the Chono and Muto thing was my number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's undisputed the moment of the year. Just like you put it, this is real life in pro wrestling.
Well, clearly it's disputed by some people, considering it didn't win. But for us, it's undisputed.
For us, it's a real undisputed. And I mean, if you really think about it, there's There's nothing you can say against this. However, there are some other moments that I want to talk about a bit. I got some runner-ups that didn't make my top 3. That would be Okada versus Kaito on January 21. Then Titan beating Hiromu Takahashi in the Best of the Super Junior. Incredible moment for me, a longtime Titan fan. Him defeating the number 1 junior in LIJ was tremendous, I thought.
Yep.
The Yota Tsuji return was a big impact in New Japan Pro Wrestling and got them tremendous reactions throughout social media. Was a great return. They played this video, and as soon as Tsuji was on the screen, everybody erupted, and he came back. My number 3 is Madoka Kikuta winning the Open the Dream Gate title 2 years after his tragic injury at the same show on the same day 2 years later. That was a very emotional moment for anyone following Dragon Gate in his career.
Yep.
My number 2, I mentioned that before. I cheated a bit. But you could choose. I guess the Muto one was more prevalent. Yuma Aoyagi going full heel and stealing Muto's pose and Tanahashi's air guitar all together. I fucking loved both moments. This guy was just enjoying himself being a prick shithead.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that was honestly like the Muto thing was like my favorite thing on the whole show because it was so great.
And then after the All Together main event, like Kento was still in the ring. And Aoyagi was pointing at him. This guy lost. Why is he still in the ring? This guy is so great.
And he broke up the fist bump between Keno and Okada. He proved, if there's one thing we can say for sure about Yuma Aoyagi, he proved that he is the lubricant of Japanese pro wrestling.
Wow. He certainly is the guy, not.
His words, not mine. He said that legitimately, that he was the lubricant of the team.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, well, he was talking about how, because remember, Keno and Okada were like, not that friendly at first. And he was like, I'm the lubricant of this team to make us all gel and unite together. And it worked. They won.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
let's look at some of the moments that the listeners voted for. It was the brawl at Wrestle Kingdom Night 2 that got the win. Chonomuto closing match segment was number 2. Then number 3, Saya Kamitani saves Utami and Queen's Quest in the cages, number 3. And also Tsuji's return was mentioned. Madoka Kikuta's Reiwa 6 speech, that got votes as well. We'll be seeing what that ultimately impacts in a couple of years if we really look back at this Reiwa 6 as this great generation.
I kind of had some thoughts about that, to be honest. That's why I didn't think about it.
I think that's more of a long-term thing than a short-term thing.
I totally agree. And I think that the Reiwa 6, like if you listen to kind of what we started at the start of the show, I think because me and you were around for the original Big Six and all of that and how that worked out. And I think to these newer viewers, they took that as more of a big deal. Like that I don't think it affected us as much as longtime viewers. This whole speech. And I remember Jay said on the interview that if they didn't have the amazing match that they needed to have, then that speech doesn't mean anything. And I don't think their match was that great, actually. It was a fine match, but not a match of the year level match. Yeah. In my opinion, that they probably needed to have to make that speech mean more than it did. And like you said, that's something that will play out because if everybody becomes huge stars, it carries the company for the next year or two, then that's going to look a lot better. But if they all flop, then we're going to look back and be like, oh, well, that wasn't as great as we thought it was. I mean, I think the same about the Kaito and Okada thing, honestly. That was an electric moment that happened. But considering where it's all led to, it was hard for me to really think it was that special considering it led to Kaito just getting destroyed at the end. So that really, I had a hard time voting for that because of what came after it.
I get that, but still, though, we are voting for a moment, right?
And that's true. I mean, I'm not against it. I'm not criticizing anyone for it.
Yeah.
But just for me, I felt like, that was electric and great and just something totally surprising. Everyone talked about it. And I think if you vote for it, then you had the right intention involved. Just for me, I think it's hard for me to really go back to that, how I felt when it happened considering what it led to ultimately. And I like the same thing with the Big Six. I think that's going to be something we have to look back on it.
Yeah, that's totally fair, I guess. All right. Best moment. I'm just looking at some of the others. Access reunion. Yeah, I got one vote. Actually, no, just only one.
That was a great moment. I'm surprised that didn't get more love, honestly.
Kenny Omega and Okada tagging at New Year's Dash was a great moment as well.
And that's something I really didn't even think about until I saw it get voted for. And I was like, yeah, that was really cool. Like, yeah, that's something that kind of got lost in the shuffle, but that was a really cool thing.
That's why we do this show, right? January 5 was just a long time ago. Yeah. And we get hit by so much stuff in between. Yeah, Yuya Aoki's Big Japan Strong title win was a great moment for the company and for him too.
I was surprised Brooks winning DDT didn't get the King of DDT didn't get more love on there. I think they've had a real low year to a lot of fans, but that was like something really special. Overall, that's something that deserved it. I know the Cage deal didn't really impact us as much as a lot of people. The Kamatani deal with Queen's Quest. That's another thing we're gonna have to look back on, like with Hayashi Shida, like what happens there. But it was something. I'll give them this. And I mean, it was still a really strong match. It wasn't. I'm not trying to downplay it, but I know a lot of people thought that was like match of the year level. To me, I didn't really have it that high, but I'll give them this. That was a moment, unlike a lot of these other ones, like the Kaito and Okada. It was like bubbling up, and then it just exploded in this one thing out of nowhere, kind of. The Kamatani and Hayashi Shida deal, that was something they had built to for months, and they finally saw it play out in this dramatic way. And I mentioned on another show, one of the best parts of that, to me, was actually the camera work of it. The way they did it with Momo hanging on the side of the cage and she just fell off camera to the ground was like really well done. But I know that we both think that the crowd reaction wasn't as great as...
No.
Yeah.
Like when you compare it to the Dragon Gate cage match a couple of days after, every single spot that was placed in this Dragon Gate cage match came across much better than the one in the Stardom cage match.
That's one I'm going to be interested at the year-end awards, how it holds up. Because that just happened.
That I brought up earlier too, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. So, the two final awards, Dylan. The Manami Toyota Joshi MVP. Going to the listeners first. Number 3, Mio Momono. She won the AAAW singles title recently. Tam Nakano, number 2, of course, red belt champion. And then, number 1, close call, but it was Julia. Do you agree, Dylan? Is Julia the Joshi MVP?
This award was so confusing to me to see how the votes played out. I was really, really surprised, honestly. Like, the thing with this is, and if you want to read more about Manami Toyota, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Eastern Lariat, because I have a ton of Toyota reviews and a new one's coming out too by the time you'll hear this. And we're getting into her run as red belt champion of All Japan Women's. So I want to plug that real quick. But this was so weird to me because there was so much back and forth over the Tom and Julia thing. So to see them as 1 and 2 is kind of poetic, I guess. Nakano's run has not been positively received. Especially the double title win, especially. Like, that was universally negative. And so really the last 2 months of the year, or the half year in this case, was not well liked. The first 3 months, she really didn't do anything. So you really have that brief month where she got built up and they had that great angle at the press conference. And then obviously the main event was like such a special moment and all of that. But I really didn't see her that way, and I'm surprised a lot of people, after the negativity surrounding her double title win, continued on. Julia is another one where a lot of people were negative at some points about her title reign not maybe living up to expectations. I loved the Yuki match. I thought that was a fantastic match. Some people didn't like it because it was a different style, but that's actually exactly why I liked it so much. And I thought the energy behind it was so special, even compared to... about that. Yeah, even compared to Julia and Tom, I thought the real heat between them was like so much more legit. To me, and this is kind of a problem with MVP, it's really going to be hard for me to vote for a Stardom person as MVP, because I always feel like if you lost to either one of these people, the company probably wouldn't have lost that much.
And that's where with Julia, I disagree with Julia, because from the perspective where I am, whenever I see something come out of a Stardom show that I didn't watch, it always is Julia doing something.
Right.
And without Julia in that company, I think they would have problems to reach these people that are not the regular viewer. Which is why when I think of Stardom without Julia, I think they would be missing a tremendous piece of their business model.
I think that may have been true, but they proved that they don't feel that way when they took the title off of her.
That's right. They took the title off of her to put that on Tam.
And it's had negative consequences.
It had negative impact, but still though, Julia remained one of the focused players in Stardom.
Yeah, she's in this trios title run. Like you said, she might be more important to outside.
Having a championship, but she always produces headlines. She always produces news.
Well, yeah, that's probably going to be more for outsider fans more than like the actual fans of the company. But yeah,
that's entirely my point. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. That's true. And I love her. I wish that she was the champion right now. I think they'd be doing a lot. Things would be a lot better if that had happened. But like I said, she's been kind of downcycled lately, and so that's kind of how I feel about that. But like you said, what you said is true. The big match ultimately is going to be her versus Mercedes when Mercedes gets back from injury. But that probably won't even be for Stardom. Like, that's very likely going to be on a New Japan show.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to say she's an MVP of the company, in that scenario. But, she's great. She's an amazing performer. Like you said, she has something that nobody else has, actually, in the company. Like, even the great wrestlers. There's a lot of great wrestlers, but nobody has what she has in terms of how she carries herself. The star power that she brings and things like that. She's just a very special talent. So I agree with that. I think, unfortunately, the booking takes away from that just for me as a fan of the company. But she's awesome. She won the award. Like, the fans clearly agree with you here. For me, I think somebody like Momono is up there. She was I really went back and forth between Momono and Arisa. To me, Nakajima is more important to Seedling than Momono is to Marvelous, only because she's had the title at this half-year point. And so that's really the only thing that separated them. Momono won the title, but that was literally 2 months ago, and she hasn't had a defense yet of it. So to me, and it's mentioned, what you mentioned before is true about the Joshi scene outside of Stardom.
Yeah.
Everyone's struggling. So that's another reason why you can vote for I think that's why we see Stardom. Julia and Tom are kind of the two people that everyone associates with that big event. So of course that's got the most votes.
But imagine take Tam Nakano out of Stardom. Is anything changing?
I feel the same way about her as I do. I don't think there's any person that you could take out of Stardom that it would make a big difference ultimately. And the thing is, if Julia left, they'd put somebody else that was also great.
I think they could. But I think still, though, they know what they have with her, which is why they put her in these kind of situations where she calls out Willow Nightingale and wins the strong title. I get that it was outside of Stardom where that ultimately happened, but it was produced in Stardom at the start.
Yeah, like I said, I would buy that more if we hadn't seen the title change. Ultimately, that's really where this comes down to. If that was true, they would. Look at last year with Shuri. She had an amazing run. They constantly protected her and made her the focus point of the company. And I thought they did a great job of that. But ultimately, you would think it was to build to Julia getting an equally great run. And, of course, that didn't come to pass. So I think my negative feelings on that title change is definitely impacting it. But I do think a lot of what you're saying is it's more important for other companies than not Stardom, to be honest. But you could argue maybe for an overall – maybe it helps the overall scene somehow, I guess.
Ultimately, it was a really tough choice because of the general state of the scene. Rika Tatsumi, I like Rika. I like her a lot. She has a great run as International Princess Champion, but she doesn't really make a difference for TJPW, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean they're at a kind of a down point at the moment. They're a cold company this year. I mean, she's the best wrestler this year in the company. If you gave me one person, I would pick her. I
guess so.
Yeah, Mizuki's run has been so flat up to this
the
moment.
run. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And she's not having great matches outside of the one she won it in, and you can't really do that much with Kakuta and people like that facing her. But she's turning that around at least with the Ito match. I think a lot of people really loved that match.
Yep,
Mizuki to Ito, and hopefully by the end of the year, the reign gets heated up a little bit more. Because like we kind of went through the same thing last year with Shoko as champion, where things really were cold for a long time, and hopefully they can get by. But the company itself is you can't really blame anybody for it. It's just the company itself is very cold, I would say. But Tatsumi's a great wrestler, and I think she's had a great title reign. So if you are biased towards Tokyo Joshi Pro and that you want to vote for somebody from there, I would probably pick her as well. Mizuki got a couple of votes as well, though.
Yeah, but she didn't make any difference, to be quite honest.
No.
For me, it was difficult. I went back to cornerstones of the Yoshi scene. You mentioned her, Arisa Nakajima. She's bigger than any company that she's wrestling for. And number 2, I have Asuka, Zenda Girls World Champion, wherever she appears. And that's the thing. That sets her apart from a lot of other Yoshi wrestlers. She branches out to men's promotions as well. And wherever she appears, she makes a difference. She has something that makes her unique, that makes her stand out wherever she appears, and that's why I put her on number 2.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is the Joshi MVP is a little bit more complicated than the men's one because of the scene, how it is. It's kind of like the companies, none of them make a difference, but you can make a difference to the overall scene. Yeah, as well. And I think Asuka is like that, and Nakajima as well, even though she's much more dedicated to her actual company as well. But both of those are great performers.
Yep. So that was a difficult one. Let's see how our final award turns out. And I guess I will make the go here for the final one, the Kenta Kobashi MVP. And in my opinion, there was no way around Katsushika Okada. He is the main player in all of Japanese wrestling, not only in New Japan Pro Wrestling. His company would be vastly different without him. Japanese wrestling would be vastly different without him. He was on Forbidden Door recently, and the aura this guy has is just tremendous. Whenever the coin drops, people go crazy. He is the number 1 guy in all of Japanese wrestling. Then on my number 2 guy in Japanese wrestling, in my opinion, for similar reasons, but not on the highest level as Okada, is actually Kenoh, because he also goes out to so many different places and represents his company so well. And with him, I think Noah would be a completely different place as well, because he has so many unique ideas that put him, his stables, his partners, his company on a higher level where they wouldn't be without him. That's why I have Kenoh on number 2. Number 3, because I have her as my Yoshi MVP, is Julia. Also, I think the Yoshi scene overall would be much lesser without Julia in it. And then sadly we can't go with another one with a 4th choice, but I wanted to mention him because without Yuji Okabayashi, I really can't imagine Big Japan Pro Wrestling. But we will see Big Japan Pro Wrestling without Yuji Okabayashi. So those are my choices.
Yeah, we'll have to imagine it. I think it's interesting that Julia won the vote for MVP at Joshi, but Tom actually got more votes than Julia in the overall MVP.
How about that?
So the Nakano fans, very passionate, as always. I can't believe it played out this way with you voting Okada, but Okada was one of my runner-ups. He's my number 2, in fact. I would definitely pick him as one of the top guys. Like you said, New Japan just totally different without him. I think he's had so much quality, especially in this era, because there's ways Sonata is never going to be a great champion, in my opinion. you need to have somebody like Okada on these cards to make that more tolerable, so to speak. And I think he's done a fantastic job of doing that. I think T-Hawk has had a great run, very underrated,
true.
In my opinion, helping both GLEAT and All Japan as well. I mean, that All Japan final show drew a huge number with him on top of it. And he's done good things for both GLEAT, really bounced them back a little bit, heading into a Sumo Hall show with him as champion on there. And the match with Nagata was very good as well. I think in-ring, business-wise, he has done a lot for like you said, every company he's been with, I think he deserves a lot of credit. My number one is Kenoh, though, making it a three-way tie at the top because it was literally a one-vote difference. Kenoh and Okada were tied, and Kento was number one. I just think Kenoh, you look at his year, he carries that company, in my opinion. Like you said, you mentioned his YouTube channel before as well. I think that plays a big difference in what he's doing with Noah. But you look at the start of the year, he carried that Wrestle Kingdom Night 2 show with Noah New Japan. He was in the main event. He was the main guy, always putting in votes of things. The feud with Naito, absolutely hilarious on his YouTube. Coming in there, doing a lot of big things. Then you see the tag runs he's had in 3 different places that he's been a guy that they've been able to lean on at different points. None of those were main events, mind you, but I think that they were big points in everyone's favor, and he's helped make them a lot better. Then you see the defection of Nakajima from Congo that led to the big singles matches with him and Nakajima and him versus Go. I think were very well received by so many people. I thought the Go match was better personally than the Nakajima match, but I think that you have a lot there. And they did a big number for that Go and Kenoh match. They weren't getting up to 1,000 in Korakuen basically ever, and then they were able to do it with him in the main event. So I think when you look at business wrestling, then you see the Congo breakup. That's a storyline that's got there, that you've got there that you saw Soya's emotional reaction to it, breaking up there. It was crazy. A lot of the fans, he knows how to get you invested in everything he's doing, even if it's not a main event. And I think Okada's great at that too. But I just think Kenoh in 3 different companies, I think that helped the scene overall. Normally I go with the company MVP more than anything, but I think Kenoh not only has helped Noah, but also helped the other 3 and gotten me very invested in everything he's done. And I really look forward to where he's going next with the blue tights now, most importantly. A 3-way tie at the top. Kento, crazy. Okada, and Kenoh for MVP. What an end.
What an end.
What did you think about Kento as an MVP candidate?
Yeah, I mean, Kento is always up there as well as someone who is very much in the focus of the company. He actually, ever since he lost the title this year, I thought that he took a little backseat in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and that is why I ultimately didn't consider him to be on top of the promotion, on top of this award.
Yeah.
But I get it. I've said it myself. Whenever you look at him outside of All Japan Pro Wrestling, he certainly is a suitable MVP candidate. So he's always someone you can go to.
He's a guy, I think, with this big run, this big match with Nakajima selling out in a way nobody else has in any company. I think at the end of the year, he's somebody we may be able to take more of a look at, depending on how things go. And I think him and ultimately this Yuma reign, the end game for it is him versus Kento in a showdown, ultimately, and hopefully Aoyagi beating him.
Wouldn't it be amazing if Kento Miyahara beats Jake Lee for the GHC title?
I mentioned this on another show. Me and Dean did. I think if you're Noah and you see this happen, I think you really need to get him back on your shows at the end of the day.
Right.
And that may have changed some plans even. We don't know yet. We'll have to see how it goes at the end of the year. And I think, if he's a Noah, then that would be a huge boon for both the company and him. Because I think that is the thing about him. When he's champion, you do see improvements in attendance and things like that. But watching it feels old hat almost. I mean, he's wrestled all of these guys so many times. Yeah, that it's. I totally get you're not maybe as enthusiastic on him as the MVP. I totally get it. And I'm the same way, honestly. He wasn't in my top 3. I would have picked Okabayashi as well. But he's always a deserving candidate. No matter what happens, everyone knows he's the heart and soul of All Japan. And we'll have to see what happens in the second half.
What do you think about Shun Skywalker?
I would vote him over Kikuta. I was going to ask about
Me too.
Kikuta, and you
Definitely.
went Shun.
I mean, I could imagine Dragon Gate without Kikuta, but I couldn't imagine the first half of Dragon Gate without Shun Skywalker.
On our Dramatic Dream Dragon show, Amy made a fantastic point. Shun, he is great, not just in terms of building himself up, but if you look at what he's done, almost all of their baby faces was built through him.
Yeah.
Whether it's Kikuta, now Diamante, you had Yoshioka last year, Daya setting up Decourage, which set up all of this in motion, was all because of his turn and what he did. Strong Machine J, way improved, thanks and largely because of him. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him a little bit, but I think if you look at his character work, to me, if there was a Best Character award, he would be my pick because he makes everyone around him better. He's an MVP to me, like using a basketball reference. He's a great point guard. He makes everyone around him better. He's not the guy that's going to score 50 points on you, but he is going to get a ton of assists, do an all-around player, be an all-around guy, and been kind of the glue to the company, in my opinion. And Kikuta, a wonderful wrestler. Like, there's nothing against him at all. Like, I like his wrestling a lot. And him winning was a great moment.
Yeah, he was.
But I think Shun is more important to the company, to me, and like just looking at it, than Kikuta was.
Like, just look at it this way. Madoka Kikuta versus Diamante would be a great Open the Dream Gate title match. Yeah. But the real money is in Diamante versus Shun Skywalker.
Well, look at their big show. Like, who was in the main, like, which feud closed that show out?
Right.
It was all about Shun and setting up a brand new babyface that has a lot of potential. Hopefully he gets back from Mexico in time to do some big things, because I think he's got a lot of momentum behind him. But I was a little surprised by Kikuta getting all that love. I think Shun is actually more important.
Yeah. Anyone else you want to talk about?
I think that Aoyagi is somebody we need to keep an eye on for the
end
second
of the
half. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think his run his talent level is very high. Like, as a fan, he's one of my favorites of any company, actually. I think that now that he's got the title, he's got a chance to be something really special and set up a great run for him at the end of the year. So I'm very happy about that. You got Watase got a vote here for MVP as well.
In his company, surely, yeah, but it's just so small.
Yeah, it's a small company, so I couldn't really vote for him. But he's a wonderful wrestler, though. So I'm a big fan of that award. I'm glad he got a little bit of love. What about Hirata?
Not even in his company. He's not close to being the MVP.
Not even the top 5 of MVP at all. Completely insane vote. But I will say this. I need to give a shout-out to one of the people who signed their name. And I couldn't find this guy on Twitter. So whoever you are, please message me and let me know, because I love it. Hirata Ayata is like one of the best moves. Hirata Ayata is one of the best moves. Like Ayata, Hirata. I love that pun. Excellent name, nice. I will say on that. I don't even know if he voted for him, but I hope he did. What about Nakajima?
Yeah, nowhere close to being the MVP. I mean, I have a hard time imagining him anywhere else, but it's not like if he was leaving Noah that the company was missing a crucial piece, because he's never really focused.
Yeah, that's the thing. It would hurt his fans, I think, if he left. Yeah. I mean, his fans would follow him.
Yeah, they would migrate to wherever he goes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree. I agree with that. One more person I think we should bring up: Muto. This wasn't a singular vote either.
No. Yeah, I mean, he was the guy for the build-up to his show.
Who would you put ahead, Muto or Kaito?
Muto.
Yeah, I think so too. Because Kaito got a couple of votes, but I totally disagree with that. I mean, they're telling you, like, when they sent him to G1, he literally said it publicly that they don't have enough fans talking about him or cheering for him, rather. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I think it's very interesting. What a poetic end to the first ever Kobashi half-year awards. A 3-way tie: Kento, Keno, and Okada, all tied.
They now need to chop the ever-living hell out of each other.
Maybe that could be a future team. I mean, hey, Noah, New Japan and All Japan. If Kento had been on the team instead of Aoyagi, that could have been a team at all together.
Yes, it could have been. So, I want to thank each and every one that voted for these half-year awards. It was a blast for me to do this show, and I was so hyped to get into interaction with you and the listeners about these. I think there has been so many great calls on this show, both from you, the listeners. I loved everything about it. But behold, I haven't told you this, Dylan. There is one more award. And
what is this?
I haven't put this out publicly because this doesn't really need any voting because we can all agree with this one. Usually we don't do negative awards, but I just had to. I just had to. Oh man. It was recently that I talked to Michelle, who was on our
year in
awards last year, and we came up with a new award, and it is the ultimate back fumbler of the half year. And Dylan, who could be a bigger back fumbler than Orca Uto?
Oh, see, you did. I told you about this on the last episode we recorded. Yes. Yeah, see, you didn't see this kind of news. I know the scoops, not when it comes to the wrestling, but I know it to the gossip. Okay,
yes, the gossip.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave the scoops for the wrestling for the other guys, but for scoops and the gossip, yes. So, Orca Uto, totally, like I said, no one could argue this point. A shocking betrayal of Risa Sera, which is bad enough on its own. Obviously, that's not something we approve of at all, and especially in Japanese culture, it's seen as very bad as well. But doubly stupid when you consider Prominence is one of his main bookers at this point. So he basically screwed over his wife and his boss at the same time. At the end of the day, he's lost everything.
That makes him the ultimate back fumbler.
I love how you've took this prestigious awards, all good vibes for the show. I said nice things about pretty much everybody on the show. You know, even Aussie Open, the team I was doubting early on. I had to put them over, tell them I come around on them. You know, and I have come around. Like I said, I don't want people to think I was snarky or anything like that. I like Aussie Open well enough. But you take all of these good vibes, all of the amazing votes that we had from the people, our biggest awards ever by far, and you end it with Orca Uto cheating on Risa Sera. All I can say is best wishes to Risa Sera.
Yes, best wishes.
And Orca Uto, you have a long way to go, buddy, in terms of getting redemption because you've screwed up bad.
What an ending to the 250th episode of the Eastern Lariat.
What other way could it have been?
Tremendous. Dylan, I enjoyed this very much, so it's getting late. So, I want to thank everybody voting. I want to thank everybody listening. This has been the Eastern Lariat. Goodbye.
Sayonara.
This is the MLW Radio Network.